This 3,000-year-old discovery rewrote ancient Egypt's royal history. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friends, have you ever sat quietly for a moment and wondered, were ancient humans truly less advanced the way we often assume? Or is it possible that our ancestors once possessed knowledge far beyond what we imagine today? We tend to believe that advanced science, complex engineering, and sophisticated medicine have only flourished in the past few centuries. Yet the deeper we dig into the earth, the more history forces us to reconsider. Recent archaeological excavations have produced a series of discoveries that continue to spark intense debate within the scientific community. There are mysterious objects thousands of years old, yet crafted with a level of precision that is difficult to explain. There are mummies preserved in an almost astonishingly intact condition over incredibly long periods of time, not only in famous Egypt, but also in China and even in the frozen regions of Russia. Each discovery is like a small door opening, revealing behind it a vast, complex, and surprising historical landscape. Ancient tombs have been uncovered along with countless unusual artifacts, extraordinary burial rituals, and traces suggesting that people of the past may have understood far more than we assume about nature, the human body, and even the universe. All of this is gradually reshaping the way we view the past. So, was the past truly as primitive as we think? Or is history still hiding truths far beyond the imagination of the modern world? Let's explore it all together in today's video. Let's get started. The 3,000-year-old cursed mummy in the Valley of the Kings. Would you believe me if I told you that, in the scorching deserts of Egypt, where winds sweep across ancient cliffs as if whispering stories of the past, there lies a body that, for more than 3,000 years, has retained an expression frozen in what looks like a scream, sending chills down the spine of anyone who sees it? Hard to believe, right? But in 1886, in the Deir el-Bahri Valley, about 300 miles south of Cairo, Egypt, archaeologists discovered the mummy of a young man, estimated to be around 18 to 20 years old, bearing exactly such an expression. This mummy, with its face locked in a backward-tilted position and mouth wide open as if crying out in the final moment of life, became known as the Screaming Mummy, a name haunting enough on its own. So imagine this. What could cause someone to die in such apparent agony? Was he poisoned or subjected to some brutal punishment? I can hardly imagine it myself. What we do know is that the body was found near the royal burial sites of ancient Egypt on the west bank of the Nile River. Yet it showed signs entirely different from traditional royal burial practices. While members of the royal family were typically wrapped in fine white linen and carefully embalmed with fragrant resins to prepare them for the journey to the afterlife, this mummy was wrapped in sheepskin, considered ritually impure at the time. The body was not fully embalmed. The hands and feet were bound with leather straps, and it was dried in natron salt. Salt was even found inside the mummy's mouth. Hearing this, doesn't it sound more like a sentence than a dignified burial ritual? And it doesn't stop there. Even more strangely, there was no name or inscription identifying the deceased. If you are passionate about Egyptian history, you may already know that for the ancient Egyptians, a name was the soul. It was the key to entering the eternal afterlife. A nameless mummy, therefore, was effectively erased from existence after death. That was the fate reserved for those guilty of grave crimes. This mystery endured for more than a century, until modern DNA research was conducted. The results, compared with other royal mummies, revealed a shocking possibility. The Screaming Mummy may have been Prince Pentawere, the son of Pharaoh Ramses III, a name linked to one of the most dramatic conspiracies in ancient Egyptian history. According to historical records, Pentawere was the son of Ramses III and his second wife. Driven by ambition for the throne, he was accused of participating in a plot to assassinate his own father and seize power. But the conspiracy failed. The punishment for treason was believed to be execution by hanging. Marks found around the mummy's neck appear to support that theory. Perhaps that scream captured the final moment of a prince realizing the terrible cost of ambition. Meanwhile, the death of Ramses III remains a major historical question. In 2012, CT scan results revealed a deep cut across his throat and a severed big toe, signs suggesting he may have been attacked by multiple assailants at once. You see, Egyptian history suddenly becomes a portrait filled with blood and betrayal. where power was exchanged for life itself. It may not be an exaggeration to say that a single mummy could alter our understanding of Egypt's royal history, don't you think? Today, the screaming mummy is preserved at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, resting silently behind a glass display case. Yet no matter how much time passes, that open-mouthed expression still seems to tell a story of conspiracy, punishment, and the judgment of history. If you ever have the opportunity, you can visit and witness for yourself one of the most chilling mysteries of Egypt's ancient past. The 800-million-year-old coffin, containing the body of a Russian princess with astonishingly preserved rosy skin. Throughout history, great discoveries have often been accompanied by mystery and seemingly unbelievable findings. And the story of the coffin discovered in the Kemerovo region of Russia is no exception. This coffin, containing the body of a beautifully featured woman, shocked both the scientific community and the world with claims that it was up to 800 million years old. An extraordinarily mysterious and strange discovery. The story began on an autumn day in September 1969, when a miner named Karnalkov reportedly stumbled upon a marble coffin inside a coal mine in the village of Rozhavchik, in the Tusulski district of Kemerovo, Russia. The outside of the coffin was decorated with intricate patterns, forming what appeared to be a remarkable work of art from a distant past. The discovery caused mining operations to come to a halt as people gathered to witness the astonishing find. When the coffin was brought to the surface, the sight inside shocked everyone present. The body of a woman had been preserved in a pinkish-blue liquid. She appeared youthful and beautiful, leaving witnesses stunned and speechless. She was described as having large blue eyes typical of Europeans, curly hair, soft white hands with neatly trimmed nails, and wearing a white lace dress that reached her knees. The dress had short sleeves embroidered with floral patterns, creating an image that was both elegant and youthful, yet mysterious, as though she were merely sleeping inside the coffin. One particularly unusual detail was a small black metal box placed near her head, about the size of a cell phone, with rectangular and circular ends. This object sparked significant curiosity and speculation. Later, local residents began referring to her as the Tisul Princess, giving the story an even more legendary tone. The coffin and the woman's body were reportedly displayed to the public for approximately 10 to 15 hours, drawing villagers from all around to witness what they believed was a historic event. However, the discovery was soon reported to authorities, prompting intervention from local officials to ensure safety. Firefighters, military personnel, and militia units were called in. A helicopter was brought in to remove the coffin from the area. By 2 p.m. that same day, the site had been sealed off and isolated to prevent any potential danger from the mysterious coffin. According to later accounts, when the coffin was prepared for transport by helicopter, it was considered too heavy. Authorities allegedly decided to pump out the liquid inside to make it lighter. Once the liquid was removed, the body reportedly began to darken before their eyes. The liquid was quickly poured back in, and the dark coloration supposedly disappeared. Within a minute, the woman's cheeks were said to regain a rosy complexion, and the body once again appeared lifelike. 5 days later, an elderly professor from Novosibirsk reportedly arrived and presented preliminary laboratory findings. According to him, the discovery would overturn much of humanity's understanding of history. He claimed that once Soviet scientists announced their findings, the scientific world would be shocked. The professor allegedly stated that the coffin was at least 800 million years old, and that the woman herself was older than the coal that had formed around the coffin. Such a claim would completely contradict Darwin's theory of evolution. To preserve evolutionary theory, some speculated that she might have been extraterrestrial. However, genetic analysis reportedly indicated that her body showed genetic consistency with modern humans. Scientists were quoted as saying, "Today our bodies are very similar to those of our ancestors from 800 million years ago. There is no evolution." The fabric of her clothing reportedly did not resemble any known modern textiles. Scientists were also unable to determine the exact composition of the pinkish-blue liquid, though some of its components were said to have properties similar to onion and garlic. As for the metal box, no official conclusions were announced, and it was said to remain under study. Some even speculated that the civilization from which this woman came may have possessed scientific knowledge superior to ours today. Evolution, by definition, is the gradual change in organisms over time. Charles Darwin proposed that all living beings evolved from a common ancestor. If Darwin's theory were correct, we would expect to find transitional fossils showing species splitting into two or more new species, as well as examples of new species forming in nature. According to supporters of this story, such evidence has not been found, and the tale of the Tisul princess sends a message that humanity may have existed far longer than what textbooks claim. The history of human existence, they argue, remains full of mysteries. Yet a troubling question remains: why did all the villagers who witnessed the event fall silent? It was reported that public unrest subsided when the Tisulski area was suddenly surrounded by military and police forces, who allegedly went door to door eliminating so-called rebellious elements. The excavation site was carefully refilled with earth. Despite official efforts, some villagers reportedly attempted to speak out. One resident even wrote a letter to the Central Committee of the government, but died within a year, with the official cause listed as heart failure. Most strikingly, within that same year, all 6 primary witnesses to the event allegedly died in car accidents, while others remained silent forever. All of this has fueled speculation that something deeply frightening remains hidden behind the body and the coffin, something ordinary people with no power or authority are simply not permitted to know. The 3,600-year-old mummy of a young girl buried with dowry on the hill of Thebes. Some stories do not begin with a loud sound, but with a layer of sand gently brushed aside. And in that very moment, history takes another breath. Earlier this year, in an ancient cemetery approximately 3,500 years old, a research team from the Jehudi project of Spain's National Research Council made a remarkable discovery: the mummy of a young girl resting quietly inside a wooden coffin. The site lies on the hill of Dra Abu el Naga, not far from modern-day Luxor, once ancient Thebes, the glorious capital of Egypt during the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom. This region is famous for its dense concentration of archaeological remains, where each excavation has the potential to reshape our understanding of the past. This discovery took place during the 19th excavation season at a burial ground that once served as the resting place of 3 pharaohs of the 17th dynasty. Now imagine this: in an area reserved for kings, the remains of a young teenage girl are found. Who was she, and why was she buried in such a prestigious location? The coffin was discovered near a mud brick chapel and beside the tomb of Jehudi, a high official who oversaw the royal treasury and public works during the reign of Queen Hatshepsut, who ruled from 1508 to 1458 BC, simply being laid to rest. Near such a powerful figure already indicates the significance of this cemetery. The wooden coffin, carved in human form, likely dates back to the 17th dynasty, around 1580 to 1550 BC. This was a turbulent period when much of Lower Egypt was under Hyksos control, and the pharaoh's authority was largely confined to the region around Thebes. Yet even during a time when the country was divided, art and religious belief did not fade. The coffin remains almost intact, and its outer layer of white paint still retains a remarkably pristine appearance. Inside was the mummy of a girl approximately 15 to 16 years old, standing about 5 feet 3 inches tall, an age far too young to say goodbye to life. But that was not what drew the greatest attention from archaeologists. What truly stood out were the valuable items placed beside her, likely dowry offerings intended for her in the afterlife. Using X-ray imaging, experts identified 2 rings and 4 necklaces inside the coffin. In addition, the girl wore a ring on each hand and earrings, details that reflect the care invested in her burial. The 4 necklaces were carefully arranged across her chest. 2 were made of bright blue faience beads. The third consisted of alternating blue and green ceramic beads. Most remarkable was a necklace composed of 75 semi-precious stone pieces and multiple finely crafted amulets, including a symbol of the god Horus, the sky deity and royal protector. According to researcher José Manuel Galán, this necklace is the most exquisite and valuable artifact recovered from the excavation. Looking at these pieces of jewelry, we can clearly see the refined craftsmanship of the ancient Egyptians. Even while much of their kingdom was under foreign domination, they continued to create works of beauty down to the smallest detail. Perhaps it was their belief in the afterlife that inspired them to devote such care, ensuring that the deceased would enter eternity with dignity and abundance. Notably, this was not the only coffin discovered. The research team also found dozens of others scattered across the ground. One theory suggests that tomb robbers may have abandoned their plunder after being caught in the act and forced to flee. Imagining that scene, we can almost see a chaotic moment in the past, where greed collided with sacred tradition. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? The journey of discovery is still ongoing. Scientists will continue to analyze the coffin and excavation site to gain deeper insight into life during the 17th dynasty. As for us, the story of this 3,600-year-old girl is more than just an archaeological find. It is a reminder that beneath the vast desert sands, each layer may conceal a life waiting to be told. And that is truly fascinating, especially for those who are passionate about the mysteries of the past, isn't it? Two skeletons of a couple in an ancient well. Imagine walking through an ancient land, one that once witnessed the earliest footsteps of human civilization. The wind moves gently through the sun-scorched grass of the Jezreel Valley, a sacred region of Israel where every inch of soil holds secrets buried for thousands of years. Then, like a dramatic scene from a movie, a team of archaeologists uncovers an ancient well, seemingly just another remnant of the past. But no one expected that at a depth of about 26 feet, a chilling mystery would be hidden. Two human skeletons lying side by side, silent for 8,000 years. These were not just unidentified remains. Preliminary analysis indicates that one was a young woman in her early 20s and the other a man between 30 and 40 years old. They were not only buried in the same place, they were found inside a narrow stone well just 4.3 feet wide, a space meant neither for the living nor for peaceful rest. So who were they? Why did they die under such strange circumstances? And what happened on that fateful day 8,000 years ago? There are no clear clues, and no signs of violence have been found on the bones. That absence of evidence only deepens the mystery and makes the case even more unsettling. Scientists are still debating and have not reached a final conclusion. One theory suggests they accidentally fell into the well in a tragic mishap. Another proposes that they may have been murdered and thrown into the well to conceal the crime. Each possibility leaves a chilling aftertaste, making it impossible to look away from the story. Yotam Tepper, the excavation director, stated that the team continues to investigate intensively. To unravel the mystery, they plan to conduct ancient forensic examinations, DNA analysis, and detailed studies of every aspect of the site. Notably, the discovery did not end with the two skeletons. The team also uncovered numerous Neolithic artifacts, stone sickle blades, broken arrowheads, and primitive tools, all scattered haphazardly around the well area. It was as if someone had left in haste, or a sudden event had frozen the site in time. Another significant detail is that archaeologists found remains of small farmsteads surrounding the well, evidence that the area was once home to a Neolithic community. A simple, peaceful life that now survives only in fallen stone pillars and fragments of the past. What caused the well, once a vital source of life for the settlement, to be abandoned? Some believe the water may have been contaminated after the mysterious incident. Others speculate that the deaths of two individuals within the well spread fear, driving the residents to leave the area forever. And the story does not end there. The greatest question still hangs beneath layers of ancient earth. Was this a tragic double suicide? Or were they victims of a ritual sacrifice that modern humanity has yet to fully understand? Theories continue to emerge, and pieces of the puzzle are gradually revealed, but the final picture remains far from complete. You see, an archaeological discovery is not simply about uncovering bones or ancient objects. It is a journey into forgotten chapters of human history. It is the moment when the past finds its voice and invites us closer to the truth, even if that truth sends chills down our spine. And you, watching this video, do you believe there are still stories waiting to be told beneath the silent layers of soil and stone? Don't forget to subscribe. In our upcoming videos, we will continue following the archaeological team as they search for the secrets still sleeping in the Jezreel Valley, where two 8,000-year-old souls await their return to the light of truth. Two moose mummies, frozen mid-battle beneath the ice in Alaska. In the biting cold of a northern winter, there are moments that nature preserves like an eternal sculpture. And one such moment truly occurred in the winter of 2016, in the town of Unalakleet, Alaska. That year, a man taking a walk through the snow near the North River witnessed something he could hardly believe. Beneath the crystal-clear ice, he saw two massive bull moose frozen solid, locked in position as if their battle had never ended. Imagine the scene. Against a vast white blanket of snow, beneath the frigid surface of the ice, two enormous sets of antlers tangled tightly together, their bodies stiff, heads lowered, as though they were pouring every ounce of strength into a final, decisive charge. The sight was both majestic and tragic at the same time, wasn't it? The man who discovered them immediately took photos and shared them on social media. Within a short time, the story spread widely, capturing public curiosity. Many speculated that the two bull moose had been fighting for mating rights, and that explanation is entirely plausible. Alaska is home to a large population of moose, thriving across its taiga forests and expansive snowy plains. In late winter and early spring, the mating season begins. Mature males, with their large and powerful antlers, confront one another head-on to prove their strength. These battles are not merely instinctive, they are the gateway to passing on their genes. Typically, such fights end when one animal submits and retreats. But in this case, events appear to have spiraled out of control. Their antlers may have become locked together during combat. As they struggled to break free, both likely lost their balance and fell into the ice-covered river. The freezing water and the sub-zero temperatures of an Alaskan winter quickly transformed them into natural statues in the wilderness. What makes this story extraordinary is not simply the death of two animals, but the fact that they were frozen at the very moment of confrontation. In nature, injuries and even fatalities during combat are not uncommon. Many moose have been severely wounded or killed by powerful blows from rival males. However, for both animals to fall into a river and freeze in a locked fighting stance is an exceptionally rare occurrence. Have you ever thought that nature can be both ruthless and fair at the same time? In the struggle for survival, there is no absolute winner. These two moose may have fought out of instinct, for dominance, for the chance to reproduce. Yet in the end, they lay together beneath the frozen surface, a reminder that strength has its limits. The story from Unalakleet did not go viral merely because of its strangeness. It also prompted reflection on the cycle of survival in the wild. Each spring brings new opportunity, but also unpredictable danger. Fierce battles may bring glory, yet they can also lead to unexpected endings. Amid Alaska's endless snowy landscape, those two bull moose have become part of natural history, a single moment frozen in time. And when we look at that image, we do not just see an unfinished battle. We feel the intensity, mystery, and raw emotion of the wild world itself. The 1,400-year-old witch skeleton beside a magical stone circle in England. In a quiet field in Warwickshire, England, where the wind moves across the ancient stones of the Rollright Stones, a monument steeped in legend, stories have long been told. According to local folklore, a king and his knights were once turned to stone there by a witch. That tale has been passed down for thousands of years, until one day a single beep from a metal detector sounded, as if the past itself had spoken. Near the Rollright Stones, a metal detectorist unexpectedly discovered a complete skeleton of a Saxon woman dating back approximately 1,400 years. The man who made the remarkable find was 44-year-old Charles Wood during a group excavation with friends. When his professional metal detector signaled, he began digging about 14 inches into the ground and uncovered an unusual object, a patera, resembling an ancient ceremonial spoon. Notably, this was only the fifth early Saxon-era patera ever discovered in England. The following day, with assistance from local finds liaison officer Annie Bayard, the excavation continued. Layer by layer, the soil was carefully removed, revealing the complete skeleton of a petite Saxon woman standing about 4 feet 11 inches tall. They named her Rita. The name sounds familiar and simple, but the story behind it is anything but. The Saxons were a confederation of ancient Germanic tribes who migrated to Britain in the 5th century. While the exact number of migrants from continental Europe remains uncertain, estimates suggest it may have been as many as 200,000 people. In that historical context, an intact grave located so close to a site associated with witchcraft legends naturally raises questions. Could this be the Witch of Rollright from local folklore? There is more. Alongside the skeleton, researchers found numerous amber and amethyst beads, as well as a large spiral ring, indications that this woman may have belonged to a high social class around 600 AD. Rita was later transported to the British Museum for further study. The patera adds another layer of intrigue. Originally, such vessels were used by Roman soldiers to place over hot coals for cooking or to hold wine offerings for the gods. The fact that Anglo-Saxons adopted and used paterae demonstrates cultural continuity following the Roman period. 4 similar items had previously been found in England, suggesting they were once relatively common. Charles Wood shared that he had earlier discovered a bronze ring, but it was too well preserved to reveal much information. However, when the patera emerged from the soil, he knew he had made a significant discovery. Speaking cautiously yet suggestively about the Rollright witch legend, he remarked, "There's no smoke without fire." Of course, archaeologists acknowledge that the skeleton's age does not precisely match the era when the stones themselves were erected. The Rollright stones date back to the Neolithic period, more than 1,000 years earlier. Even so, the grave's location and the presence of objects with possible religious significance lead researchers to believe that Rita was undoubtedly an important figure within her community. So was this merely a coincidence between archaeology and legend? Or do ancient folktales preserve fragments of truth? A skeleton, a few ritual objects, and a legendary location, all intertwine into a story that feels half history, half myth. It is impossible to say for certain. Perhaps beneath the soil surrounding the Rollright stones, more secrets still lie waiting to be awakened. What do you think? 2,000-year-old shrine, sleeping beneath Pompeii's volcanic ash, suddenly revealed. Have you ever wondered what remains after a devastating catastrophe? Homes may collapse, lives may vanish, but sometimes, destruction itself becomes an unexpected shield protecting the past. That is exactly the story of a Roman shrine recently discovered in the ancient city of Pompeii, which was buried for nearly 2,000 years. Archaeologists have uncovered an ancient household shrine known as a lararium. In Roman culture, a lararium was typically placed near the entrance of a wealthy family's home. It was where offerings were made, incense was burned, and prayers were said to the household guardian deities. Simply put, it was the sacred corner of the home where faith and daily life came together. What makes this discovery remarkable is not only its 2,000-year age, but also its astonishing state of preservation. The shrine was built directly against the wall of a small house, and its vivid red paint remains strikingly bright. Across the wall stretches a painted garden scene, birds spreading their wings, lush trees, and serpents slithering beneath the foliage. Looking at it, you might feel as though you are standing before a real garden rather than an ancient mural. The artwork follows classic Roman stylistic traditions. Peacocks are painted along the wall, creating the illusion that they are walking through a vibrant, living space. Every small detail reflects the skill and refinement of the artisans of that era. Even more intriguing is the depiction of a man with the head of a dog. Many experts believe this could represent a Roman adaptation of the Egyptian god Anubis. The presence of such imagery reveals the blending of religious beliefs among Mediterranean civilizations of the time. It is a small detail that opens the door to a much larger story of cultural exchange and spiritual influence. Fascinating, isn't it? According to Professor Ingrid Rowland of the University of Notre Dame, the lararium was an essential feature of Roman households. However, only the wealthiest families could afford to construct a separate room decorated so elaborately. This suggests that the homeowner was not only financially prosperous, but also deeply devoted to spiritual life. Massimo Ossana, director of excavations at Pompeii, explained that the structure has been preserved in extraordinary condition. Ironically, it is thanks to the ash and volcanic debris from the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79 that covered and effectively sealed everything beneath it. That thick layer of ash shielded the shrine from the passage of time, preserving every color and brushstroke for more than 2 millennia. Ossana described the discovery as both a marvel and a mystery worthy of further study. Indeed, every wall and every painting here is more than art. It is a doorway into the spiritual world of ancient Romans. Standing before that shrine, you would not simply see an ancient structure. You would see faith, hope, and the quiet prayers of a family that once lived, loved, and feared the forces of nature. The disaster of AD 79 froze that moment in time, allowing us today to touch an intact fragment of history. Massive cannon reveals a shocking story about a 17th-century warship. At a depth of about 105 feet beneath the cold waters off the southern coast of England, near the seaside resort town of Eastbourne, a silent witness to history lay undisturbed for more than 3 centuries, until it was recently revealed. This was not merely a decaying shipwreck, but a warship that once roared through clouds of cannon fire. The Dutch vessel Klein Hollandia. What sends a chill down the spine is the enormous cannon still resting there, as if it had fired only yesterday in the heat of battle. The discovery was announced by Historic England following close collaboration with the British Maritime Archaeology Association and the Cultural Heritage Agency of the Netherlands. Interestingly, the wreck had first been located in 2019 by a local dive operator. However, it took years of analysis, archival research, and dendrochronological studies, examining the growth rings of the wood, before experts could confirm its true identity. Klein Hollandia was built in 1656 at a time when wooden warships were symbols of national power. It took part in major battles during the Second Anglo-Dutch War, 1665 to 1667, one of the fiercest series of conflicts fought over control of maritime trade and colonial dominance. But the true tragedy unfolded in 1672. While returning to the Netherlands from the Mediterranean, the ship was suddenly attacked by an English squadron. Heavily damaged, Klein Hollandia sank almost immediately, taking with it many sailors from both sides. Its commander, Jan van Ness, was also killed in the battle. Imagine the vast ocean echoing with the sound of splintering wood, clashing metal, and shouted commands amid clouds of gunpowder smoke. Then, sudden silence. That single event became a spark leading to the Third Anglo-Dutch War, part of a larger chain of naval conflicts spanning from 1652 to 1784. One ship sank, but its consequences rippled across Europe. According to Historic England, the wreck's condition is remarkable. The wooden hull remains relatively intact, allowing researchers to gain deeper insight into 17th-century Dutch shipbuilding techniques, an era when the Dutch were regarded as masters of the sea. On the seabed, archaeologists have also discovered large cannons, marble stone blocks, and fragments of Italian pottery. These artifacts tell not only a story of warfare, but also of trade, voyages, and daily life aboard the ship during its final, fateful journey. Yet what makes the story even more compelling are the unanswered questions. We know when the ship was built, which battles it fought in, and how it sank. But what about the finer details? What specific cargo was on board? How did the crew fight back in their final moments? Are there still secrets buried beneath layers of seabed sediment, waiting to be brought to light? It may take many more years for archaeologists to fully analyze everything Klein Hollandia has left behind. But even now, the mere sight of that massive cannon resting on the ocean floor after more than 350 years is enough to make us pause and reflect. History does not exist only in books. Sometimes it lies at the bottom of the sea, quietly waiting for someone patient and passionate enough to awaken it. And who knows, perhaps in the next layers of sediment uncovered, the story of Klein Hollandia will surprise us even more. It very well might. What do you think? Or do you see it differently? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. The mummified hunting dog, trapped inside a tree for 60 years, still intact. Have you ever imagined that a tree trunk could become a natural coffin? This isn't something out of a movie. It's a real story that once stirred international media attention. The story resurfaced and spread widely again in early 2018, sending chills down many spines. In reality, the discovery dates back to 1980. When workers from the Georgia Craft Corp cut down a large chestnut oak tree, they had no idea that something unbelievable was hidden inside its hollow trunk. From an opening in the log, the brown and white head of a dog protruded. At first glance, some were startled, thinking the animal was still alive. But no, it was a dried, naturally mummified body. The dog was later given the name Stucky, a name that sounds both ironic and heartbreaking, as it literally means the one who got stuck. The story is believed to have begun in the 1960s. At that time, Stucky was likely chasing prey and accidentally crawled into a hollow opening at the base of the chestnut oak tree. At first, the gap may have been wide enough for him to enter, but higher up, the trunk narrowed. The dog kept crawling deeper until he could no longer turn around. Imagine that moment. A strong hunting dog struggling in a confined space. The harder he tried to escape, the more tightly he became wedged. Eventually, he was trapped forever inside the tree, which continued growing day by day. The chestnut oak inadvertently became a sealed tomb, encasing the small body for decades. 20 years later, when the log was cut open, instead of grinding it up like so many other trees, the workers decided to preserve the unusual discovery. Stucky was placed on display at Southern Forest World, where his remains can still be seen today. Through the glass, visitors can clearly observe his body stretched forward as if he were still trying to crawl out of the tree. What makes this story remarkable is not just the tragic coincidence, but the way nature mummified Stucky. According to experts, chestnut oak wood contains tannin, a naturally astringent compound capable of drawing out moisture and inhibiting bacterial growth. This property quickly dried the dog's body, limiting decomposition. In other words, the tree unintentionally created an environment similar to a natural drying chamber. It didn't stop there. The hollow structure of the tree, combined with upward airflow, created a chimney-like effect. Continuous air circulation helped carry odors away and prevented other animals from detecting the remains. Thanks to the combination of tannin's dehydrating properties and this natural airflow, Stucky's body did not decay but gradually dried out, preserving his posture for 60 years. In truth, Stucky is not the only example in natural history. Many organisms have been preserved under special conditions, buried in sand, entombed in peat bogs, covered in salt, or trapped in hay. In fact, during the 17th and 18th centuries in England, people sometimes sealed cats inside walls to ward off witches, and the airtight mortar preserved their remains over time. Yet Stucky's story holds a unique power. It is not only a biological phenomenon, but also a reminder of both the harshness and the wonder of nature. A small opening, a split-second instinctive decision, and an entire life sealed within a tree trunk. What do you think? Was this simply the tragic accident of an unfortunate animal? Or is it one of the clearest examples of how nature can be both cruel and astonishingly miraculous at the same time? The vanishing village in the Dubai desert. Dubai, a name that evokes luxury, wealth, and sky-piercing architectural marvels. The city is famous for its towering skyscrapers, high-end supercars, and one of the most extravagant lifestyles in the world. Yet hidden beyond the bright city lights, past the busy highways and modern developments, lies an entirely different world. A vast, barren, silent desert where time seems to stand still. Within that landscape exists a place that has unsettled both scientists and explorers alike, the town of Gigi, often referred to as the ghost town of the Dubai desert. Gigi is unlike anywhere you've ever known. By day, it appears to be an ordinary old village with a few low structures and faint traces of a once living community. But when night falls, something strange happens. The entire village disappears. Not a single rooftop, not a single trace, not even a shadow remains. Everything seems swallowed by darkness and drifting sand. Even with modern equipment, researchers have been unable to determine its precise location at night. For that reason, it is not only called a ghost town, but also considered one of the Middle East's unsolved mysteries. Numerous scientists, scholars, and geologists have traveled there hoping to explain the phenomenon. Some suggest it may be caused by an extreme desert mirage, where shifting light and temperature changes after sunset create optical distortions that make the village seem to vanish. Others argue that the desert sand itself is the culprit, claiming that wind patterns and terrain allow sand to cover the village within hours at night, only for it to reappear the following morning. Yet no theory has proven fully convincing. Measurement tools and observational equipment have produced inconsistent results, making Gigi even more elusive, as if it exists on a fragile boundary between reality and illusion. Historical records indicate that Gigi was once home to a small community several centuries ago. However, after a period of excessive resource exploitation and severe environmental degradation, residents were forced to migrate elsewhere. The town was abandoned and gradually forgotten. Sand, wind, and time appear to have finished the rest of the work, burying rooftops, roads, and the memories of a distant past. It was only after the population thinned and nature reclaimed the land that the strange nightly disappearance phenomenon began to be reported, turning the site into one of the modern world's enduring mysteries. Today, Gigi attracts adventurous travelers and explorers, but most dare to visit only during daylight hours. Few are willing to remain after sunset, as rumors of a so-called curse of the night have never been fully dismissed. The ghost town in the Dubai desert continues to challenge science, fuel imagination, and stir endless curiosity about the mysteries humanity has yet to fully grasp in this vast world. 10,000-seat theater buried beneath a field. Let's turn back the wheel of time thousands of years to a peaceful island off the western coast of Greece known as Lefkata. You may recognize Lefkata for its picture-perfect beaches, but what you might not imagine is that beneath layers of soil, stone, and ancient olive groves, this island was once the heart of a thriving civilization. For centuries, archaeologists searched tirelessly for a long-buried mystery, an ancient theater mentioned in old historical records, yet never seen with the naked eye. That journey, filled with hardship and passion, was finally rewarded. Around the 8th or 7th century BC, Lefkata was a vibrant center of trade and culture before it was taken over by the ancient Corinthians, one of the most powerful city-states of the time. They transformed Lefkata into a fortified city with a bustling harbor and monumental public structures. Among those constructions was a grand theater, a place once alive with songs, music, and dramatic performances that echoed through generations. But as centuries passed, the theater faded into obscurity. It was gradually swallowed by lush olive fields and later overshadowed by modern structures built over thousands of years. It wasn't until 1997, after a careful topographical and surface survey of Lefkata, that archaeologists first detected unusual signs beneath a vast olive grove, an early suspicion that the ruins of the ancient theater might be hidden directly beneath their feet. Yet suspicion is one thing, proof is another. Nearly 20 more years of preparation followed. Finally, in 2015, a large-scale excavation officially began. Archaeological authorities and local officials worked closely together, relocating olive trees and removing modern obstacles, slowly revealing one of the most astonishing architectural discoveries ever made on the island. Then, almost like a miracle rising from the earth, the ancient theater emerged. Its circular stage measures approximately 54.6 feet in diameter, a scale comparable to the famous theaters of Athens or Epidaurus. The corridors surrounding the stage were intricately decorated. The seating area curves in a semicircular design with 24 rows, including a designated section for distinguished guests, evidence of the theater's importance in ancient social life. It is estimated that the theater could accommodate up to 10,000 spectators, a remarkable number when compared to the population of the ancient city at the time. Although centuries of natural erosion and agricultural activity have taken their toll, parts of the stage and several rows of seats closest to it remain relatively well preserved. These ancient traces seem to echo with the sounds of glorious performances past, of art, culture, and the pride of a city that once shone brightly in Western Greece. Today, plans are underway to restore the ancient theater of Lefkata, with hopes of returning it to its rightful historical prominence. While its exact construction date has not yet been definitively established, that uncertainty does nothing to diminish the immense archaeological and cultural value of this extraordinary discovery. Once again, Lefkata is more than just a tourist destination. It is a guardian of the sacred legacy of a civilization that once illuminated human history. Can you imagine it? Beneath your very feet, an entire vibrant world once existed. As for me, honestly, I can hardly comprehend it. 2,000-year-old engineering marvel to rival the Great Wall. Yet few in China even know its name. When people speak of the great achievements of ancient China, many immediately think of the Great Wall, a lasting symbol of power and ambition under Emperor Qin Shi Huang. The massive wall winds across mountains and deserts, etched deeply into history as a source of national pride. But would you believe that another structure exists, quieter, more discreet, not rising boldly above the landscape but hidden beneath the earth, yet stretching twice as long as the Great Wall and sustaining countless generations for more than 2,000 years? That structure is the underground Karez irrigation system in Xinjiang. Xinjiang is a dry highland region where the sun seems to scorch every inch of land. Evaporation exceeds rainfall. Even during the rainy season, vegetation struggles to thrive. Imagine living in such a harsh, windswept environment. Persistent drought, failed harvests, and the constant threat of famine once made life here as fragile as a thread in the desert wind. It was under these circumstances, during the reign of Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, that a bold decision changed the fate of the entire region. The emperor realized that to secure the frontier and ensure long-term development, the water problem had to be solved. And so the Karez system was born, not as a grand monument towering above ground, but as a resilient network hidden deep beneath it. Ancient engineers made use of meltwater from snow and glaciers in the surrounding mountains during the summer. They dug tunnels running along the foothills, skillfully connecting underground water veins. The water flowed through the cool darkness below the surface, protected from the intense evaporation of the desert sun. To access the water, vertical shafts were dug from the surface down to the tunnels, like enormous straws reaching deep into nature's lifeline. It may sound simple, but consider this. More than 2 millennia ago, there were no modern machines, no advanced surveying technology. Everything relied on human labor, inherited experience, and extraordinary perseverance. Yet they created a network stretching approximately 3,100 miles, twice the length of the Great Wall, with around 1,700 wells of various sizes. Isn't that remarkable? After the completion of the Karez system, life in Xinjiang entered a new chapter. Farmland was no longer cracked and barren. Farmers had access to irrigation year-round. The threat of famine gradually receded. In particular, in the Turpan region, the cool water flowing through these ancient tunnels transformed the area into one of the world's most renowned grape-growing regions. Plump clusters of grapes, when dried, become raisins with a uniquely rich sweetness, a sweetness born from mountain snowmelt and from the sweat of countless generations. What is striking is that, although built around the same time as the Great Wall, the Karez system is not a bustling tourist attraction. It does not rise dramatically for visitors to photograph, nor does it appear as an iconic image on postcards. Even today, many people, including some in China, are unfamiliar with the name of this extraordinary hydraulic engineering project. But sometimes, the greatest achievements are not the ones on display. They flow quietly beneath the surface, sustaining human life for thousands of years. And perhaps, after hearing this story, whenever you think of humanity's greatest accomplishments, you will remember that there is another Great Wall, not built of bricks and stone above ground, but constructed from determination and ingenuity, lying deep beneath the deserts of Xinjiang. If you ever have the opportunity, consider visiting and seeing this remarkable engineering wonder for yourself. 2,100-year-old Western, Han Mummy and the Curse that shook the archaeological world. Some tombs, when opened, contain nothing but bones and ashes, but others send chills down the spine, because what lies inside seems as though it never truly belonged to the past. The tomb discovered in early 1975 at Phoenix Mountain, Jiangling County, Hubei Province, China, is a striking example. That year, an excavation unexpectedly uncovered a secret that had lain undisturbed for more than 2 millennia. Inside the ancient burial chamber, archaeologists found the nearly intact body of a man. Based on inscriptions found within the tomb, his surname was Sui, and he was from Yangli, in Jiangling County. During his lifetime, he held the rank of Wu Daifu, a mid-level noble official. He was buried in the 13th year of the reign of Emperor Wen of the Han Dynasty, 167 BC. That means he had rested there for more than 2,100 years. What stunned researchers even more was that this mummy predates the famous Lady Xinjui by about a century. That fact alone was enough to astonish the academic world. The moment archaeologists pried open a small crack in the coffin, a strong foul odor immediately rushed out, accompanied by a stream of dark red liquid. They quickly collected 4 full bags of the strange fluid. The air must have felt heavy and tense. No one knew what awaited them inside. When the coffin lid was finally lifted completely, everyone was nearly speechless. Inside lay a man with pale pinkish-white skin and a full figure. His body was entirely hairless. His skin still retained elasticity, and his joints were capable of movement. In his mouth was a milky white jade seal engraved with a single character, Sui. Imagine standing before a body more than 2 millennia old, yet with flesh still as soft as someone who had passed away only days earlier. How would that feel? At that moment, science itself seemed pushed to its limits, but the strangeness did not end there. Shortly after exposure to air, the body began to change rapidly. The skin darkened and visibly thinned. Recognizing the abnormal transformation, experts immediately conducted a forensic examination. The findings revealed that the man was approximately 60 years old, weighed about 116 pounds, and stood 5 feet 6 inches tall. All 32 of his teeth were intact, and his respiratory tract showed no blockage. His brain filled about 4/5 of the cranial cavity, about 2 pounds 2 ounces. Blood vessels on the surface of the brain membrane were still clearly visible. Researchers even identified nearly 12 pairs of cranial nerves and determined that his blood type was AB. These detailed data provided invaluable material for the study of Western Han burial practices and ancient body preservation techniques, offering unprecedented insight into early medical and embalming knowledge. However, the scientific excitement did not last long. It was soon overshadowed by a disturbing development. After the excavation, two experts, Xia Xiangjun and Chen Yong, suddenly developed a mysterious illness. Painful large boils erupted across their bodies, difficult to treat and resistant to diagnosis. Despite seeking medical care in multiple places, doctors could not determine a clear cause. Even more alarming, several other members of the excavation team began showing similar symptoms. Rumors quickly spread. Local residents whispered about a tomb curse, claiming that anyone who disturbed the ancient dead would have to pay a price. But science offered a different explanation. The body had been immersed in mercury sulfide, a compound with powerful antibacterial and preservative properties. Because the excavation took place during the hot summer, once the coffin was opened, the substance rapidly evaporated. The experts had inadvertently inhaled high concentrations of heavy metal vapor, leading to severe skin and health complications. So behind what seemed like a supernatural tale, the true culprit was not a curse, but a silent chemical reaction waiting in the darkness. But if you had stood inside that ancient tomb, with a foul odor rising, red liquid spilling out, and a still soft body lying before you, would your mind turn first to science, or would you shudder at the thought of something beyond explanation? The tomb of a 17-year-old princess held a secret that shook history. In 1960, in the heart of the ancient land of Shanxi, China, the swings of archaeologists' shovels uncovered a painful chapter of Tang dynasty history in ancient China. From deep beneath the layers of earth, an imperial tomb gradually came into view, and a stone stele inside confirmed that its owner was Princess Yongtai, Li Xianhui, the seventh daughter of Emperor Zhongzong of Tang, Li Xian, a young girl of only 17, yet her fate was heartbreakingly short. According to records in the Ziji Tongjian, comprehensive mirror to aid in government of China, she died at a very young age and was buried alongside her husband. Historical accounts pass down a dark explanation for her death. Because she discussed Zhang Yiji, Empress Wu Zetian's favored male companion, with her brother and husband, the empress ordered her to be beaten to death. Other sources state that she was granted white silk, a discreet expression referring to an ordered suicide. Hearing this alone, many might assume it was simply another palace tragedy, where even a few careless words could cost a life. But the inscription on the stone stele buried underground tells a completely different story. The carved text reveals that the princess died from complications during childbirth. Experts later analyzed the pelvic bones found in the tomb and observed that the bone structure was not yet fully developed. At 17, her body may not have been physically prepared for a safe delivery. When researchers compared the dates with historical records, they discovered that she died just one day after her husband and brother passed away. Could it be that overwhelming emotional shock triggered premature labor? A young royal woman, having just learned of the deaths of her loved ones, may have faced the agony of childbirth amid profound despair. Although she died during a time when she had been accused of wrongdoing, her status as a princess meant the tomb was filled with gold, silver, and precious treasures. Later, when Li Xian was restored to the throne, he renamed her burial site from a grave to a mausoleum, as a way of clearing her name and restoring her royal status. That detail alone reveals the lingering sorrow of a father's love that endured through the years. But the story does not end with the tragedy of the young princess. On the 6th day of excavation, just when everything seemed to have been clarified, experts discovered a male skeleton lying right beside the coffin. Next to the remains was an iron axe, rusted with age. At the top of the skull, a clear puncture hole was visible. The clothing had almost completely decomposed, leaving only fragile fragments clinging to the white bones. Forensic examination indicated that this man lived during the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period, at the beginning of the Song dynasty, hundreds of years after the princess. Gold and silver were still scattered around his body. This led experts to favor the theory that he may have been a tomb robber. While searching for treasure, he likely suffered a fatal accident. Perhaps the ceiling of the tomb collapsed. Perhaps the very tool in his hand caused the deadly blow. Throughout history, tomb robbing has always been a high-risk gamble. One successful theft could change a person's life, but a single mistake could cost that life entirely. The man may have believed he was only a few swings of his axe away from unimaginable wealth, yet in the end, he remained forever in the place he intended to violate. On one side lay a 17-year-old princess who died in sorrow and pain. On the other lay a grave robber who lost his life to greed. Two destinies separated by centuries, yet resting beside each other in the cold darkness of the mausoleum. History is not merely dry pages in a book. It is made up of real lives that once breathed, suffered, and made choices. So what do you think is the final truth behind Princess Yongtai's death? And was that man simply the victim of an accident, or does his presence conceal an even deeper, untold story? 14 skeletons buried 4,000 years beneath the foundation of a construction site in China. In 1999, in Qinghai Province, China, during construction at a building site, workers unexpectedly discovered numerous human remains buried deep beneath thick layers of soil. At first, no one knew whether it was simply an ancient tomb or evidence of a much larger catastrophe. Sensing that this was no ordinary find, they immediately notified the local archaeological authorities. Soon, a door to the past, dating back approximately 4,000 years, began to open. An archaeological team formed by the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences and the Chinese Institute of Cultural Relics quickly arrived at the site. After conducting field investigations and comparing historical records, experts concluded that the remains were evidence of a devastating prehistoric earthquake. The area was later identified as the Lajia site, covering about 4.3 million square feet, with a central excavation zone of about 2.15 million square feet. It is located in Lajia Village, Guanting Town, Minhe County, Qinghai Province, in the upper reaches of the Yellow River. This was a Neolithic settlement and to this day is considered the only site in China where a large-scale natural disaster has been preserved almost intact beneath the earth. At excavation point number 4 of the Lajia site, archaeologists uncovered a total of 14 human skeletons. What left them stunned was that most of the remains belonged to children, including one skeleton determined to be that of a child only about 2 years old. Imagine an ordinary afternoon 4,000 years ago. People were going about their daily routines, cooking, caring for children, living their lives, when suddenly the ground began to shake violently. There was no warning, no time to escape. The terror of that moment is almost impossible to comprehend. Even more haunting were the positions in which the skeletons were found. Some were crouched tightly together. Some were pressed low against the ground. Others lay on their sides as if trying to shield themselves from something. Most heartbreaking of all was the image of a mother clutching her child tightly in her arms. The bones of her arms still encircled the small body, her head raised as though pleading for a miracle in that life-and-death moment. Witnesses at the excavation later said that no one present could speak in the face of such a scene. DNA analysis revealed that the 14 individuals were biologically related, most likely members of the same family or clan. Furthermore, research indicated genetic connections to modern Han Chinese populations as well as to certain Burmese-speaking groups. These findings provide important clues about migration patterns and the origins of populations in this region thousands of years ago. Yet amid this tragic scene, archaeologists made another astonishing discovery: an ancient bowl of noodles preserved almost intact. Analysis showed that people were making noodles from millet more than 4,000 years ago. Can you imagine that a food so familiar to us today has such a long history? This discovery placed the Lajia site among the 10 most significant archaeological finds in China at the time. A single earthquake froze one family's final moments beneath the earth for 4 millennia. Yet that same disaster has helped later generations better understand ancient life, cuisine, and ancestral origins. When we look at the image of the mother holding her child, we see not only sorrow, but also a love that transcends time. If you had stood before that scene, what would you have thought? Are we witnessing only a tragedy or a message from the past meant for the present? As for me, I find it deeply heartbreaking and profoundly moving. The strange bronze hand in a 3,000-year-old tomb. Among the countless artifacts unearthed from the soil of China, some can be identified at a glance as weapons, jewelry, or ritual objects. But others have left the entire archaeological community debating for years without reaching a clear conclusion. A striking example emerged in December 2000 when archaeologists discovered a tomb more than 3,000 years old, dating back to the Shang dynasty. As the excavation progressed, the grand scale of the burial structure gradually came into view. More than 200 pieces of jade, along with numerous ancient bronze artifacts, were uncovered, clear evidence that the tomb's owner held no ordinary status. Yet among these familiar relics, one unusually shaped object stood out and left experts momentarily stunned. It was a bronze right hand, complete with part of the forearm. The interior was hollow, and it was attached to a wooden handle. It measured approximately 5.2 inches long and 2.7 inches wide, roughly the size of a child's hand. On the back of the hand was an intricately carved animal face motif, its eyes sharp and imposing. Strangely, however, the 5 fingers were completely smooth, without any decorative patterns. This contrast puzzled specialists. Although tens of thousands of Shang dynasty tombs have been excavated, nothing like this bronze hand had ever been found before. As a result, its function quickly became a subject of intense debate within the archaeological community. Some initially suggested it was purely decorative, but that idea was soon dismissed. Others proposed that it might have been used to hold food, while a few even speculated that it functioned as a back scratcher. Interesting theories, but considering its small size and valuable material, such explanations were quickly rejected. A number of experts boldly suggested that the object may have served as a self-defense weapon. However, based on its shape and design, the bronze hand had no claws, no concealed blades, and no sharp edges capable of inflicting injury. It simply could not have been used to harm an enemy. So what was it made for? While debate continued, further excavation provided a crucial clue. The tomb owner's skeletal remains were discovered in relatively well-preserved condition. Bone analysis showed that he died at the age of 35, considered the prime of life for a man in ancient times. From surviving historical records, archaeologists identified the tomb's occupant as Ya Chang, a military general who served under King Wu Ding, the 22nd ruler of the Shang dynasty. As historians revisited the records, Ya Chang's story became clearer. He was a brave and accomplished general who achieved many distinguished victories for the royal court. However, in a fierce battle, one of his arms was severed. At that moment, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Experts eventually reached a consensus. The bronze hand was a funerary offering. When Ya Chang died, in order to express gratitude for his service and to ensure that his body would be whole in the afterlife, his soldiers specially crafted the bronze hand and placed it in his tomb as a symbolic replacement for his missing limb. It was not merely cold metal, it was a symbol of loyalty and remembrance. Reflecting on this story, we see that amid the brutal warfare of 3 millennia ago, a general may have lost his arm, but he did not lose his honor. And when he finally passed away, his comrades chose a remarkable way to preserve his wholeness and dignity in death. Isn't that fascinating? The tomb of a prince, bombed 7 times yet still intact, and the astonishing secret behind it. Some tombs collapse with just a single strike of a shovel. Others, however, remain silent and unmoved even after explosions shake the sky. In Zhongxiang, Jingmen, Hubei Province, China, there truly exists such a tomb, one that for years, tomb robbers tried every possible way to destroy, only to walk away empty-handed. The tomb belongs to Prince Yingjing, Zhu Dong, the 24th son of Zhu Yuanzhang, better known as the Hongwu Emperor, the founding ruler of the Ming dynasty. According to the Zhongxiang Annals, his mausoleum was built on a grand scale, surrounded by fortified walls. Inside were 7 main halls and 30 smaller rooms. The sheer size of the complex reflects both his status and the high regard in which this prince was held. Yet that very grandeur made it an attractive target for tomb robbers. From the late 20th century into the early 21st century, the site was repeatedly threatened. In 1964, it was officially designated as a protected cultural heritage site. Even so, beginning in 1999, criminals brazenly attempted to blast their way inside, detonating explosives a total of 7 times in an effort to break through the structure. The most serious explosion created a crater nearly 26 feet deep. Just imagine a bomb crater that large in the middle of an ancient mausoleum. It's chilling even to think about. And yet, what astonished everyone was that every attempt at intrusion failed. Explosions thundered, earth and stone flew into the air, but the hidden inner chambers remained unbreached. So how could a structure hundreds of years old withstand such destructive force? To answer that question, in December 2005, the Hubei Provincial Bureau of Cultural Relics proposed an official excavation of Zhu Dong's tomb, both to investigate the reason for its resilience and to preserve its historical value. The opening of the mausoleum gates attracted international media attention. When archaeologists entered, they finally understood why the tomb robbers had failed. The mausoleum sits embraced on three sides by mountains, covering a total area of approximately 38,750 square feet. In reality, it is a cave carved deep into solid rock, reinforced externally with brick and stone. The burial mound is oval-shaped, standing about 26 feet high, stretching roughly 151 feet east to west and 115 feet north to south, with a circumference of approximately 394 feet. This mountain-embraced tomb design functioned like a natural fortress, concealed yet incredibly strong. Explosives could tear apart the outer soil, but penetrating thick layers of solid rock was an entirely different matter. When the excavation results were revealed, experts were stunned. Despite repeated intrusions over the years, more than 5,000 cultural relics were still preserved inside. Among them were over 1,400 pieces of gold, silver, and jade, as well as more than 3,400 jeweled ornaments and gemstones. A true treasure trove had remained buried for centuries. Most remarkable of all was a pair of blue and white porcelain vases, exquisitely decorated with peony motifs and 4 mural-style paintings encircling their bodies. The two vases were nearly identical, forming an exceptionally rare matched pair. The 4 painted themes were Wang Xiji's love of orchids, Tao Yuanming's love of chrysanthemums, Zhou Dunyi's love of lotuses, Lin Hejing's love of plum blossoms. Each figure represents a renowned historical scholar celebrated for his admiration of flowers, symbols of purity, integrity, and the virtues of a gentleman. After appraisal, the material value of the pair was estimated at hundreds of millions of Chinese yuan. But truthfully, their cultural and historical value is far greater, as they preserve artistic and philosophical excellence through centuries of upheaval. Looking back, 7 explosions failed to destroy a mausoleum so carefully designed within the mountains. The more people tried to violate it, the more they came to appreciate the intelligence and foresight of those who built it. If you were standing before that deep bomb crater, knowing that an entire cultural treasure still lay intact beneath your feet, would you call it luck or the invisible protection of history itself? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below so we can discuss it together. 6,000-year-old blood channel in the Upper Euphrates reveals one of Turkey's most chilling discoveries. At Totem Mound, near the city of Elazığ, Turkey, archaeologists uncovered a discovery that sends chills down the spine of anyone who hears about it. The find was a temple complex dating back approximately 6,000 years. Remarkably, it is considered the oldest known religious structure ever discovered in the Upper Euphrates River Basin, an area that once served as a major cultural crossroads for ancient civilizations. The excavation, carried out by Turkey's Ministry of Culture and Tourism in cooperation with the Elazığ Museum, revealed details that are nothing short of unsettling. Most striking within the complex is a structure ominously referred to as a ritual blood channel. This is not an exaggeration. According to archaeologists, the channel was designed as a drainage system directly connected to a stone altar slab marked with numerous knife cuts. 6,000 years ago, ritual sacrifices were performed here. The blood and internal organs of victims, both human and animal, were directed through the channel into a deep pit below. The structure indicates that these rituals were not random acts, but carefully organized ceremonies with a clear procedure. This reflects a belief system that had already developed to a surprisingly sophisticated level. But the discoveries did not stop there. Within the temple complex, archaeologists also uncovered 4 platforms, likely used for placing offerings during prayer rituals. A sacred hearth was also found, suggesting that fire played an important role in spiritual ceremonies. Beyond the architecture itself, numerous ritual artifacts were excavated, including pottery, seal stamps used in agricultural transactions, arrowheads, and spindle whorls used in textile production. These details demonstrate that this was not only a place of worship, but also closely connected to the economic and social life of the ancient community. Most remarkable of all were deity figurines crafted from stone, clay, and bone. These are considered among the earliest known forms of symbolic religious expression in the region. In other words, long before many other famous religious sites emerged, this location had already developed a structured belief system represented through tangible images of deities. According to archaeological supervisor Ergun Demir, the temple was constructed with a foundation of rubble stone combined with mud brick walls. This technique enabled the structure to withstand natural disasters as well as human threats. The close arrangement of buildings suggests an early form of urban planning with intentional organization designed to support communal life. This indicates that society at the time was not fragmented, but rather structured and purposeful. The temple complex's location near the Euphrates River adds even greater significance. This was a cultural crossroads where Mesopotamian civilization blended with ancient Anatolian traditions. Its strategic position may have made the temple a regional religious center, attracting pilgrims and contributing to the formation of early state structures. Consider this: 6 millennia ago, on what may have seemed like barren land, humans were already organizing rituals, constructing durable architecture, creating symbolic representations of deities, and forming orderly communities. What does that tell us about the people of that time? 5,500-year-old warrior, buried in amber instead of soil, the strangest tomb ever discovered. Normally, when we think of an ancient grave, we imagine soil, bones, and a few burial objects scattered around the body. But in northwestern Russia, there is a tomb that led scientists to declare, "Nothing like this has ever been found before," because the person buried beneath the ground was not covered with earth, but with treasure. The story begins in Petrozavodsk, along the western shore of Lake Onega in the Republic of Karelia, when an archaeological team led by Associate Professor Alexander Zhulnikov from Petrozavodsk State University set out to search for unexplored ancient fortifications. They did not expect their greatest discovery to lie deep beneath the cold soil. Inside a narrow, oval-shaped burial pit, they uncovered the remains of a person who had lived approximately 5,500 years ago. The body had been wrapped in animal hide and covered with a layer of red ochre and flint, materials considered highly valuable at the time. But what stunned researchers most was the layer above the body. Instead of soil, ancient people had carefully arranged a treasure of amber and gemstones over the remains. These were not scattered randomly. Each piece had been deliberately placed in layers, with clear intention. The amber had been crafted into buttons, pendants, and small decorative discs. Even more remarkably, this particular type of amber was a rare solid variety that had never before been found in Eastern Europe. Just imagine, more than 5 millennia ago, what would it mean to possess and use such a rare material to fill a grave? Clearly, the person buried there was no ordinary individual. Based on the quantity of jewelry and valuable tools found in the tomb, scientists believe the deceased, possibly a high-status figure, held an important role within the community. The layers of treasure were not merely displays of wealth, they reflected profound respect. However, the individual's gender remains an open question. There is no definitive biological evidence to confirm it. That said, near the burial site, archaeologists discovered a finely crafted flint projectile point, possibly a spearhead. During that era, such weapons were typically associated with male burials, especially warriors. For this reason, many researchers lean toward the theory that this was an ancient warrior deeply honored by the community. Another significant detail concerns the origin of the amber. Analysis indicates a connection to tribes along the southern coast of the Baltic Sea, believed to be the source of this material. This suggests that people living around Lake Onega 5,500 years ago maintained the exchange networks, trade routes, or at least cultural contact with regions hundreds, even thousands of miles away. This tomb is not merely the resting place of one individual. It stands as vivid evidence of social status, burial beliefs, and the extensive networks that prehistoric communities had already established. Instead of covering the body with soil, they chose treasure, as if to say that this person deserved to be surrounded by the most precious things of all. And perhaps that is not an exaggeration. Tomb guarded by dragon and tiger for 6,400 years in China. Have you ever wondered when the dragon, the supreme mythical creature in Chinese culture, first appeared? A being that exists only in legend, yet became the symbol of the 9-5 Supreme, representing the emperor and ultimate imperial authority. And yet, The true origin of this image has long remained a question that troubles many historians. Then, in 1987, an accidental discovery in Henan province seemed to lift part of the veil of history. In May of that year, at a construction site in Shishuipo, Puyang, Henan province, workers unexpectedly unearthed numerous human skeletons. Realizing something was unusual, the person in charge immediately halted construction and reported the find to local cultural heritage authorities. That caution led to an important rescue excavation. After investigation, experts determined that the site was an ancient burial complex dating from the Yangshao period, approximately 5000 to 3000 BC through the late Western Han Dynasty. Because some tombs had already been damaged, the Henan Provincial Bureau of Cultural Relics quickly organized an archaeological team to conduct an emergency excavation. At first, no one imagined that this dig would cause such a major stir in Chinese archaeology and cultural studies. It was not until October 1987, while clearing a tomb labeled M45, that archaeologists discovered a large number of clamshells surrounding the remains. During the Yangshao period, shells were used as a form of currency, so their presence in a burial was not unusual. What stunned everyone, however, lay on either side of the skeleton: a dragon approximately 5.6 feet long and a tiger about 4.9 feet long, both meticulously formed entirely from white shells. Viewed from above, the dragon twists sinuously, with its head raised and back arched, radiating power. On the other side, the tiger crouches, full of strength and presence. Together, they seem to silently guard the eternal rest of the tomb's occupant. The scene is so vivid that it is hard to believe it was created more than 6 millennia ago. Calculations date Tomb M45 to approximately 6,400 years ago. This makes it the oldest dragon image ever discovered in China. Even more striking, the dragon's appearance is not very different from the dragon imagery familiar today. The discovery immediately sparked debate. Some argued that archaeologists were exaggerating, since in the end it was simply shells arranged into shapes. But experts see it differently. The dragon does not exist in nature. So who first created its image? Why did it gradually become deified and reserved exclusively as a symbol of imperial power? And if a fully formed dragon image existed 6,400 years ago, could its origins be far older than previously assumed? These questions are what make the discovery at M45 truly extraordinary. Not only was there a dragon, but also a tiger, another creature symbolizing strength and authority, positioned on the opposite side of the remains. This pairing was clearly not accidental. It resembles a silent declaration of the status and power of the person buried below. Yet here lies the paradox. Throughout the tomb, there were no artifacts identifying the occupant, no inscriptions, no grave goods clearly indicating a name or title. This absence only deepens the mystery. To this day, the true identity of the tomb's owner remains unknown. However, based on the scale and especially the carefully arranged dragon and tiger imagery, experts largely agree on one point. The person buried here was certainly not ordinary. It may have been a tribal leader, a religious authority, or someone who held a uniquely important role in the Yangshao community. So who do you think rests in that tomb? Could this be the earliest trace of a symbol of power that would endure throughout the entire span of Chinese history? Perhaps the answer remains open. But the discovery at M45 has brought humanity one step closer to uncovering the secret origins of the dragon, the mythical creature that would one day dominate an entire civilization. What do you think? 2,300-year-old mummy of a woman in the Baharia oasis, carrying a mysterious treasure. Around mid-April 2010, Egyptian archaeologists unexpectedly discovered a complex of 14 ancient tombs in the Baharia oasis, located about 186 miles southwest of Cairo. As soon as the discovery was announced, Egypt's Ministry of Culture suggested that this might be only part of a much larger cemetery that had lain silently beneath the desert sands for thousands of years. Yet what truly astonished scientists was found inside one small tomb within that complex. When layers of soil and stone were cleared away, they were confronted with the image of a petite woman dressed in Roman-style clothing, a long robe, a head covering, bracelets, a necklace, and shoes. But most striking were her large black eyes, without visible whites, staring wide open as if looking directly at the viewer. Imagine standing in the stillness of an ancient tomb and suddenly meeting that gaze. Wouldn't it send a chill down your spine? At first, some were startled, thinking they were face to face with a mummy whose eyes were open. However, after careful examination, experts determined that this was in fact an exquisitely carved plaster sarcophagus. Two gemstones set into the eye sockets created an eerily lifelike effect, giving viewers the unsettling feeling that the figure within was still present. Nevertheless, inside the sarcophagus there truly was a real mummy. Through research, scientists concluded that the woman lived during the Greco-Roman period, approximately 2,300 years ago. This is also the first Roman-style mummy ever discovered in Baharia. Archaeologist Mahmoud Afifi, head of the excavation, explained that the tomb had a distinctive design, featuring stairs and a corridor leading down into the burial chamber, and was constructed around 300 BC. Initially, because of the tomb's relatively small size, his team believed they had uncovered the burial of a child. However, the elaborate decorative details and physical characteristics indicated that the remains belonged to an adult woman. So who was she? Her exact identity remains unknown. Yet based on the meticulous and intricate carvings on the sarcophagus, experts believe she was likely a wealthy woman with social status and influence at the time. In the ancient world, not everyone could afford such a finely crafted coffin, let alone one adorned with gemstones set into the eyes. The discoveries did not end there. Inside the tomb, archaeologists also found a gold relief depicting the four sons of Horus, an important deity in ancient Egyptian belief. According to tradition, these four gods protected the stomach, liver, lungs, and intestines of the deceased. This finding shows that although the burial reflected Roman stylistic influence, it still retained strong elements of traditional Egyptian religious practices. Additionally, several plaster masks bearing female faces, glassware, clay objects, and metal coins were uncovered. The coins were carefully examined in hopes of determining a more precise date for the tomb. Taken together, these details create a clearer picture of the mysterious woman's life and status. Afifi further suggested that this discovery indicates there may be an even larger burial complex hidden beneath the sands of Baharia. However, rare episodes of humidity in the region may have damaged portions of the site. In fact, Baharia has long been known as a land of mummies. In 1996, archaeologists discovered 17 tombs containing a total of 254 mummies there. You see, even in the harsh desert, history quietly endures in its own way, and the deep black eyes of that 2,300-year-old woman, though nothing more than lifeless gemstones, still make us wonder, how remarkable must her life have been for her to receive such an honored burial in the heart of the desert? The secret letter in the ancient tomb of a 25-year-old princess in China. You know, archaeology has always been something mysterious, fascinating, and remarkably good at awakening our curiosity. Some treasures, once unearthed, leave people in awe of their exquisite craftsmanship. But others, the longer you look at them, the heavier your heart feels. A powerful example of this occurred in 2001 during the expansion of a university campus in Xi'an, China, a region that was once among the most magnificent capitals of the Tang dynasty. Quite by accident, workers discovered an entire complex of 182 ancient tombs buried deep underground. Among those hundreds of graves, one in particular captured the attention of archaeologists, the tomb of a young princess. She was identified as Li Cui, the fifth-generation granddaughter of Emperor Gaozu of Tang, Li Yuan, the founding emperor of the Tang dynasty in Chinese history. Born into royalty and carrying noble blood, she died at just 25 years old, an age when life has only just begun to ripen, when dreams remain unfinished and happiness is only beginning. And yet, it all came to an end. Isn't that truly heartbreaking? Inside the tomb, the marks of time were unmistakable. Floods and earthquakes over the centuries had shifted some burial objects and caused minor damage. Yet remarkably, the tomb had never been looted. Because of this rare stroke of fortune, archaeologists were able to uncover what was essentially an intact treasure trove. Gold, silver, porcelain, jade jewelry, all of it vividly reflected the sophistication and prosperity of the era and spoke to the noble status of its owner. But among the countless treasures, one object left everyone stunned: a phoenix crown, a ceremonial headdress once reserved for empresses and imperial consorts. so magnificent it was almost beyond belief. Although it had lain underground for 12 centuries, with many joints broken and several details corroded, the crown as a whole still radiated an extraordinary sense of dignity and refinement. In February 2010, experts from China and Germany worked together to restore the Phoenix crown using the recovered fragments. Once completed, it revealed just how extraordinary the craftsmanship of Tang Dynasty artisans had truly been. The crown stands 16.5 inches tall and weighs over 28 ounces. It is inlaid with 370 precious stones, including turquoise, amber, pearls, rubies, agate, seashells, interwoven with gold and silver. Most astonishing of all are the tiny gold beads measuring just 0.004 inches in diameter, so small they can only be clearly seen under a microscope. Can you imagine that more than 1,000 years ago, without modern machinery, ancient craftsmen were able to create such intricate details? When the Phoenix crown was first displayed to the public in 2010, it was quickly recognized as one of the most magnificent Phoenix crowns in Chinese history. Yet the more people admired its brilliance, the more they felt a quiet sorrow when thinking about the woman who once wore it. According to historical records, Li Cui died during childbirth. She left this world at a painfully young age, leaving behind an infant still wrapped in swaddling cloth. Inside the tomb, archaeologists discovered several lines of a heartfelt letter written by her husband, Hao Mochen. It read, "There is a child still in swaddling clothes. One look is enough to break the heart. In this desolate land overgrown with wild grass, for 10,000 years to come, how sorrowful it will be." Though only a few brief lines, they carry immeasurable grief, as if the sorrow had seeped into the very layers of earth and stone. Her husband, Hao Mochen, was only a 7th-rank official responsible for organizing and editing records at the Jiheng Library. Given his position, marrying a royal princess was once considered marrying above his station. But Li Cui never cared about such gossip. She chose the man she loved and lived peacefully by his side. For a time, they shared a quiet and genuine happiness despite the difference in status. Tragically, that happiness was as fleeting as a flash of lightning. The young wife passed away, leaving behind a newborn child and a husband forced to face his solitude alone. Perhaps it is those heartfelt lines that are the true treasure, more moving to modern historians than any gold or jewel. Because in the end, what remains after more than 1,200 years is not only a glittering phoenix crown, but a story of love, loss, and the fragile fate of a human life amid the relentless currents of history. Don't you think so? The 3,700-year-old queen's remains in an ancient tomb filled with rare jewelry. If I told you that around 3,700 years ago, in what is now southern Spain, there may have existed a society where women held the highest political power, what would you think? Hard to believe, right? And yet, an archaeological discovery at the La Almoya site has truly forced scientists to reconsider the role of women in Bronze Age Europe. The story began in 2014, when archaeologists were excavating the ruins of La Almoya in the region of Murcia, Spain. Beneath the floor of a large room in the ancient complex, they uncovered the skeletal remains of a man and a woman, buried together inside a large ceramic jar. Both date back to around the mid-17th century BC. What caught researchers' attention was not only the fact that they were buried together, but also the 29 high-value objects placed beside them. Initial examinations revealed that the woman died in her early 20s, possibly from tuberculosis. She was laid on her back, her legs bent toward the man. During her lifetime, she had a congenital physical condition, yet this appears not to have diminished her social standing. On her remains, archaeologists found numerous silver ornaments, hair ties, earrings, bracelets, rings, and most notably, an exquisitely crafted silver diadem. It was this diadem that led researchers to believe she was no ordinary woman. The man, meanwhile, was in his 30s. When buried, he wore gold earrings. A silver ring was found near his back, and beside him lay a bronze dagger secured with 4 silver rivets. Genetic analysis showed that the two shared children, including a young daughter who was buried elsewhere at the site. They were clearly a family, but who truly held the power? That question is difficult to answer. What researchers do know is that, based on the artifacts found, the couple belonged to the elite class of the El Argar civilization. a flourishing Bronze Age society that thrived from around 2200 to 1500 BC. Notably, the room where the remains were discovered was not an ordinary living space. It was a large hall with benches capable of seating about 50 people. Researchers have referred to it as a kind of parliament, as it may once have been the setting for important political activities, perhaps even an early form of palace. What surprised archaeologists even more was that when this tomb was compared with 4 other El Argar burials located hundreds of miles away, remarkable similarities emerged. High-status women were typically buried with diadems, while men were buried with swords or daggers. However, the quantity and quality of grave goods found with men were often inferior. This suggests that although men may have been warriors and enforcers, true political power may very well have rested in the hands of women. According to study co-author Cristina Rihuete, swords may have served to enforce political decisions, but the ones making those decisions could have been women. It points to a society where gender roles were clearly defined. Men managed weapons and territorial expansion, while women occupied the highest leadership positions. La Almoya, first discovered in 1944, is considered one of the central sites of the El Argar society, one of the earliest civilizations in the region to use bronze, build urban settlements, and establish a class-based state structure. The division of wealth and labor appeared very early on, and now these new findings reveal yet another dimension. The balance of power may have tilted toward women. The building where the 2 individuals were found was burned down not long after their burial, as if a chapter of history had closed in flames. Yet thousands of years later, from beneath those layers of ash, a question still echoes. In that distant age, were women the true decision-makers behind the forces that shaped an entire civilization? What do you think? Feel free to share your thoughts or anything you know about this civilization in the comments below. The mummy with a deformed hole in his skull. Amid the cold, dense layers of mud in the marshlands of northern Germany, a man lay undisturbed for more than 2 millennia, as if time itself had forgotten he ever existed. No gravestone, no farewell, only the damp earth silently preserving his entire story. Then, in 1871, during a survey near the city of Kiel, experts made a startling discovery. A bog body later named the Renswuren Man, one of the marshland remains that sent chills through the archaeological community. What makes this case so unsettling is how remarkably well preserved the body was. Thanks to the acidic, oxygen-poor bog environment, the man's skin, hair, and many soft tissues survived in astonishing condition despite the passage of thousands of years. Just imagine, how could a human body endure for so many centuries and still remain, as if death had come only yesterday? After the discovery, specialists conducted extensive examinations and analyses to uncover the identity of this unfortunate man. The results showed that he had lived sometime during the 1st or 2nd century BC. Based on his skeletal structure and physical condition, researchers estimated that he died between the ages of 40 and 50, an age not necessarily considered old in the ancient world. But most striking of all was that his death was not natural. It was neither illness nor accident. He had been killed. Researchers found a triangular hole in his skull, the unmistakable mark of an extremely powerful blow to the head. The strike was forceful enough to pierce the skull, revealing the brutality of his final moments. Can you picture it? A decisive swing, a sharp cracking impact, then silence settling over the desolate marsh. No witnesses, no trial, only nature preserving the evidence for more than 2,000 years. The wound indicates that he suffered a violent and painful death, perhaps sudden, perhaps the outcome of a conflict we will never fully understand. This raises an important question. Why was his body left in the bog? Across prehistoric and ancient Europe, many bog bodies have been discovered bearing signs of violent deaths. Some theories suggest they were victims of ritual sacrifice. Others believe they may have been criminals or traitors executed as punishment. However, these remain only hypotheses. So was the Renswuren Man the victim of a religious ritual? Or was he killed over a personal dispute? To this day, scholars continue to debate the answer. What is certain is that the bog did not merely swallow his body, it preserved every detail of the crime. Because of that unique environment, we are now able to look directly into the face of a man who once lived, breathed, perhaps had a family and a story of his own. Each time a bog body is uncovered, it is as though another door to the past is opened. And the story of the Renswuren man reminds us that history is not always made of dry pages in a book. Sometimes it is a triangular wound in a skull, a silent testament to a mysterious death that even today we have yet to fully explain. 10,000-year-old ghost footprints that appear only in the rain and vanish in sunlight. In a barren landscape where the wind carries nothing but dust and white salt, there are moments when the past unexpectedly rises from beneath the earth. Not pyramids, not crumbling fortresses, but bare footprints pressed into the sand. Footprints left by humans at least 10,000 years ago. Strangely, they are not always visible. They emerge only when it rains, and then quietly disappear again once the sunlight dries the ground. It may sound like something out of a science fiction movie, but this remarkable discovery is entirely real. It was documented near Hill Air Force Base, in the desert regions surrounding the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Today, the area is dry and intensely salty. But if you could travel back to the end of the last ice age, you would see a completely different scene. The region was once a vast wetland, the remnant of a massive prehistoric lake that covered much of what is now the western United States. Over time, as Earth's climate changed, the lake gradually dried up. It was during this transitional period that humans lived and moved through the area. At first, archaeologists only happened to notice a few faint footprints, but after using ground-penetrating radar to scan the surrounding terrain, they identified at least 88 individual footprints belonging to both adults and children. Think about that. Not just one person passing through, but possibly an entire group, even a family, once walking across the shallow waters. What does that tell us? Archaeologist Darren Duke, who led the research team, explained that ancient inhabitants appeared to have walked extensively in this area. At the time, the ground consisted of damp lakeshore sand, much like a modern beach. Each step sank into the shallow water and was quickly covered by sand. It might seem that such traces would vanish completely, but the reality was different. Beneath the sand lay a layer of fine mud capable of preserving impressions much like ink soaking into paper. That layer silently safeguarded these footprints for thousands of years. What makes the discovery feel almost ghostly is the way the prints reveal themselves. When rain falls, water quickly seeps into the sediment below. This process changes the color of the ground's surface, causing the mud that once held the footprints to darken compared to the surrounding sand. As a result, the shapes of the feet suddenly become visible, standing out against the lighter desert floor. But once the sun rises high and the moisture evaporates, the prints fade back into the landscape, as if no one had ever walked there at all. This phenomenon not only sparks curiosity, but also provides a valuable research opportunity. Using radiocarbon dating, scientists hope to analyze tiny remnants of organic material preserved in the sediment. Through this, they may gain deeper insight into the biology, environment, and settlement patterns of prehistoric people in the region. These footprints may serve as evidence that humans successfully adapted and survived during the dramatic climate changes at the end of the last ice age. They are like a diary written in earth, recording each step, each ordinary moment of people who lived 10,000 years before us. Perhaps it was a mother guiding her child across shallow water. Perhaps it was a group searching for food. Each footprint is a fragment of an unfinished story. And what makes us pause and reflect is this. Despite being separated by 10 millennia, those bare footprints look strikingly familiar. The people who made them walked, lived, and adapted, just as we do today. The only difference is that they left their traces for time to protect, waiting for an unexpected rainfall to retell their story in the heart of the Utah desert. Isn't that fascinating? 100-million-year-old fossil skeleton in Australia. Imagine standing in a remote, sun-scorched landscape that was once the floor of a deep ocean hundreds of millions of years ago. Then, in that dry red earth, you suddenly spot part of a fossilized bone protruding from the ground. Not from an ordinary animal, but from a massive prehistoric marine creature. That is exactly what happened in remote Queensland, Australia, where 3 amateur paleontologists, adorably nicknamed the Fossil Chicks, accidentally unearthed one of the most spectacular paleontological discoveries in recent history. A nearly complete fossil skeleton of a juvenile plesiosaur, a 20-foot-long marine reptile that lived more than 100 million years ago. Known as an elasmosaur, this extraordinary creature is far more than just another fossil. It is an incredibly valuable piece of the puzzle, helping scientists trace clues about life during the Cretaceous period, the age dominated by dinosaurs and enormous marine reptiles. According to Espen Knutsen, a senior curator at the Queensland Museum, this discovery is comparable to a Rosetta Stone for paleontology. Why? Because when a plesiosaur died, its head and extremely long neck, which made up nearly two-thirds of its body, would typically detach due to decomposition and scavenger activity. As a result, finding a fossil with both the skull and body intact is exceptionally rare. These marine reptiles once lived in the Eromanga Sea, an ancient inland sea that covered much of Australia's interior at depths of about 165 feet. Plesiosaurs were formidable predators. Unlike fish, however, they did not have gills. They had to surface to breathe, making them more similar to modern whales. What makes this discovery even more exciting is that the specimen is a juvenile. This offers scientists a rare opportunity to study how these giant creatures developed through different stages of life. Knutsen also revealed that by analyzing the chemical composition of the fossil's teeth, researchers hope to determine its diet, migration patterns, and habitat. Such data are invaluable for reconstructing a vivid picture of ecosystems from over 100 million years ago, from how these animals moved to what they ate and where they lived. And if you think this is an isolated discovery, think again. In just the past few years, Australia has become a paleontological hotspot. From the fossil skeleton of a gigantic dinosaur nicknamed Cooper, as tall as a two-story building and as long as a basketball court, to the remarkable discovery of a flying dragon, a terrifying carnivorous creature that soared across Australian skies 105 million years ago. All of these discoveries are gradually revealing a fascinating truth. This now arid land was once the stage for extraordinary life forms, where fierce survival battles played out among marine reptiles, dinosaurs, and aerial predators. And today, each time the red Earth is turned over, the past rises again, challenging our current understanding of Earth's history. The miracle formula that preserved the Dead Sea Scrolls for 2,000 years has finally been discovered. In the arid wilderness east of the Judean desert, rock caves once quietly safeguarded one of humanity's most precious textual treasures, the Dead Sea Scrolls. This extraordinary collection of ancient manuscripts is considered a historical treasure, containing the oldest known handwritten copies of the Hebrew Bible. Dating from approximately 408 BC to 318 AD, these scrolls lay undisturbed for nearly 2 millennia in more than a dozen caves at Qumran, in what is now the West Bank. What has astonished scientists is not only the immense historical and religious value of their contents, but also the remarkable way they survived the passage of time. Think about it. Parchment made from animal skin, only about 0.004 inches thick, should have deteriorated long ago. Yet the most beautifully preserved scroll among the nearly 1,000 discovered remains strikingly bright and intact. How is that possible? All of the scrolls had been placed inside clay jars and hidden in caves, likely to protect them from destruction by the ancient Romans. But the dry climate alone does not fully explain their extraordinary preservation. The real secret was uncovered when Professor Admir Masick and his colleagues analyzed fragments of parchment using microscopy, X-ray spectroscopy, and Raman spectroscopy. The results surprised many researchers. On the surface of the parchment, they found a unique mixture of salts containing varying proportions of calcium, sodium, and sulfur. Notably, this specific salt composition does not occur naturally in the area surrounding the Dead Sea. In other words, this was not a random environmental effect. It was the result of an intentional processing method. According to the research team's hypothesis, ancient scribes treated the parchment with a special salt solution and allowed it to evaporate. After the first layer dried, they likely rubbed additional salts onto the surface to complete the preparation. This process created a protective mineral layer that prevented the parchment from breaking down for 2,000 years. The parchment itself was made from animal skins that had been carefully dehaired, defatted, scraped clean, and stretched on frames, a highly skilled craft. But it was this miracle salt treatment that proved to be the true key to its durability. Ironically, most of the damage to the Dead Sea Scrolls did not occur during their 2,000 years resting in the caves of Qumran. According to Professor Masick, Significant deterioration resulted from modern efforts to soften and unfold the scrolls after their discovery so they could be read and studied. The unique mineral layer has the ability to absorb moisture from the air. Once removed from their naturally dry environment, the scrolls began absorbing humidity, gradually damaging the underlying material. It is a sobering paradox. Our curiosity and desire to understand the past have, at times, unintentionally threatened the very heritage our ancestors preserved for thousands of years. For this reason, ongoing research on the Dead Sea Scrolls demands greater caution than ever before, from storage conditions to handling methods. The story of these ancient manuscripts is not merely about uncovering an old preservation formula. It also reveals that the ingenuity of ancient people far exceeded what we once imagined. In the harsh desert, they developed a material capable of defying time itself. Today, as modern science slowly peels back each layer of mystery, we are reminded that the past is never simple. It always holds secrets waiting to be discovered, if we are patient enough and respectful enough to truly listen. 1,200-year-old mansion in the Negev Desert. In the arid expanse of the Negev Desert, where it seems there is nothing but sand, wind, and scorching sunlight stretching to the horizon, a secret lay buried for more than 1,200 years before suddenly coming to light. Archaeologists recently announced the excavation of a luxurious ancient mansion in a Bedouin town in southern Israel, unveiling a fascinating new chapter in Middle Eastern history. No one expected that in a land as barren and harsh as the Negev, there had once stood what could be described as a luxury rural estate. This was not merely an old house, but an astonishingly refined architectural complex dating from the 8th to 9th centuries, the early Islamic period. The Israel Antiquities Authority described the site as a jewel buried beneath the sand. Marble-paved corridors and walls adorned with delicate frescoes seem to recount the story of a once glorious era. What makes this discovery especially remarkable is not only the beauty of the structure, but also its geographic context. This is the first find of its kind ever uncovered in the Negev Desert, a mansion featuring vaulted architecture arranged around a central courtyard, a style typical of early Islamic design, appearing so far from the political and economic centers of the time, has raised numerous questions. Who lived here? Why build such an opulent residence in the middle of an unforgiving desert? The answers may lie beneath the surface. In underground chambers and storage rooms, excavators discovered ancient oil lamps and a subterranean water cistern, evidence that this mansion was not simply a dwelling, but a carefully planned space designed for both daily life and hosting guests. This was no ordinary residence. According to archaeologist Noe D. Michael, the luxurious compound and its complex underground systems demonstrate the considerable wealth and power of its owner. Whoever lived here not only had the authority to construct such an imposing estate, but also the influence and resources to maintain exceptional comfort in the harsh desert environment. Based on the findings, it is reasonable to conclude that the resident was a person of high status, perhaps a local ruler or elite leader, someone who possessed not only power, but also refined taste and impressive organizational ability. This discovery opens an entirely new perspective on the history of the Negev region. Previously, there had been no indication that this area had ever been home to nobility or ruling elites. Now, this grand architectural complex stands like a whisper from the past, suggesting that the land was once prosperous, a setting for displays of power where art, architecture, and survival strategies existed side by side. We are witnessing vivid evidence of human adaptation and advancement during the early Islamic period. Rather than being subdued by the harsh natural environment, people transformed the Negev into a place where they could live, thrive, and express social status. The find also illustrates the extent of Islamic influence in the 8th century, not only religiously, but architecturally, economically, and culturally. This is more than an archaeological discovery. It is an essential piece of a larger puzzle that helps reconstruct the broader history of the ancient Middle East. The marble stones, the remaining frescoes, even the water cistern and oil lamps, all serve as clues guiding us back to a time when rulers lived in hidden desert estates, surrounded by luxury and authority. This discovery is not simply about uncovering an old house. It is a gateway through time, opening a journey into a civilization that once thrived in a place seemingly unfit for survival. It reminds us that beneath the thick layers of history's dust, countless untold stories remain. stories of power, ambition, and humanity's ability to overcome nature. And perhaps this is only the beginning. The Negev may still conceal many more secrets, waiting to be revealed by those who continue searching for truth among the fragments of time. A 2,300-year-old glass workshop filled with Celtic coins. In July 2023, archaeologists in the Czech Republic made a discovery that sent waves of excitement through the research community. The oldest known glass workshop north of the Alps, dating back approximately 2,300 years. Remarkably, this site was not merely a place of craft production. It may also have held ritual or spiritual significance for the ancient people who lived there. The site is part of an ancient settlement known as Nemčice, which flourished during the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. Here, artisans once created exquisite glass bracelets and beads, items that were not only decorative but also symbols of status and power. Imagine this. More than 2 millennia ago, in a Europe that was still largely untamed, skilled craftspeople were melting glass and shaping intricate details by hand, relying on inherited knowledge and experience. Doesn't that suggest a remarkable level of development? During the excavation, archaeologists also uncovered more than 2,000 gold and silver coins minted by the Celts, a people who once inhabited vast regions across Europe. Such a large number of coins indicates that Nemčice was no ordinary village. It was likely an important trade center where goods and wealth were actively exchanged. In fact, the site was first discovered in 2002. Early surveys revealed sunken huts, bronze amulets, and coins scattered throughout the area. Those coins served as crucial clues, suggesting that the settlement may have been part of the Amber Road, a vast trade network linking the Baltic Sea region with the Mediterranean. This route was once a major commercial artery of ancient Europe, along which amber, precious metals, and other goods were transported across hundreds, even thousands of miles. However, it took more than 20 years before archaeologists finally uncovered clear evidence of the glass workshop itself. Although no direct glass-making tools were found, researchers identified a mixture of finished and unfinished glass products, along with amber artifacts. This strongly suggests that the items were produced on-site rather than imported. The simultaneous presence of glass and amber further reinforces the idea that this location was once a major production and trading hub. Even more intriguing, beyond the artifacts, researchers discovered a distinctive square structure reminiscent of ancient ritual architecture. This design resembles the site of Sandburg in Austria, which was once occupied by the Celts and is believed to have been used for ceremonial purposes. This raises an important question. Was Nemčice solely a commercial center, or was it also a place where significant rituals took place, a location where material wealth and spiritual life intersected? If so, we may be looking at a far more complex picture of ancient Celtic society. They were not merely warriors or traders, but communities with rich spiritual traditions. The placement of a production workshop within what may have been a ritual space suggests that glass objects were not just commodities, they may have carried symbolic meaning as well. This discovery opens a new perspective on pre-Roman Europe. Rather than scattered tribes, there may have been developed economic and ceremonial centers connected through expansive trade networks. And today, in the heart of the modern Czech Republic, that 2,300-year-old glass workshop tells the story of a once thriving culture, one that combined refined craftsmanship with spiritual belief, leaving an enduring mark on the flow of history. Shoe trapped in a bog for 2,000 years, still intact like new. On June 21, 2021, researchers from the Office for the Preservation of Monuments in Lower Austria, working together with the German excavation company Denkmal 3D, discovered an ancient shoe beside a wooden roadway dating back as far as 2,000 years. What makes the find remarkable is that the shoe was almost completely intact, despite having rested beneath layers of mud for 2 millennia. Nearby, archaeologists also found a broken wagon axle, leading them to speculate that someone may have lost the shoe while replacing the axle along that muddy stretch of road. Have you ever wondered how leather and wood, materials that typically decay so easily, could survive for so long? The answer lies in the bog environment itself. High acidity levels combined with oxygen-poor conditions created what can only be described as a natural vault, perfectly preserving whatever was buried beneath. Because of this unique environment, we are able today to touch authentic fragments of history. In fact, building wooden roads across wetlands was not uncommon in the past. Throughout many parts of Europe, ancient communities laid down large timber logs to create stable passageways for people and horse-drawn wagons to cross waterlogged terrain. Most of those roads, however, have long since disappeared with time. Only a few have survived thanks to exceptional preservation conditions. For example, in May 2021, during the installation of a heating system in the city of Dortmund, Germany, workers unexpectedly uncovered a wooden road dating back about 1,000 years to the medieval period. It had been preserved beneath a thick layer of clay. But the story does not end there. The 2,000-year-old shoe is only a small part of the broader search for humanity's oldest footprints. In a cave in Armenia, archaeologists once discovered a pair of cowhide leather shoes dating back 5,500 years. The shoes were stitched with leather cord, their laces still intact, and their structure astonishingly well preserved. Many studies suggest they may have belonged to a woman and were placed in the cave as part of a special ritual. The deeper researchers look, the more chilling the discoveries become. Inside that same cave, scientists also found 3 vessels containing the skulls of children, along with jars holding barley, wheat, and apricots. Why such a strange combination of food and human remains? Was it part of a harvest ritual, or a ceremony to guide souls into the afterlife? Those questions remain unanswered, as if the past itself is testing our curiosity. From a shoe trapped in a bog to wooden roads hidden beneath the earth, each discovery reminds us that history has never truly been asleep. It is simply waiting to be found. And who knows, perhaps right beneath our feet today, 2,000-year-old stories are quietly waiting for the moment they can finally be told. It is entirely possible. Valley of the Kings, the resting place of ancient Egypt's most powerful pharaohs. In the barren desert along the west bank of the Nile River lies a place where scorching daytime sands and cold nighttime winds have guarded secrets for thousands of years. Not towering pyramids beneath an open blue sky, but tombs carved deep into rocky mountains. This is where the pharaohs of ancient Egypt chose their final resting place for their earthly journey. It is here that much of what we know today about a civilization that once astonished the world has been preserved. Located near the ancient capital of Thebes, the Valley of the Kings is one of the most famous archaeological sites on the planet. 63 tombs of pharaohs, queens, and high-ranking officials have been discovered here, scattered across the East Valley and the West Valley. This royal burial ground was established after Egypt was unified and entered the New Kingdom period, approximately 1550 to 1077 BC, a time considered one of the wealthiest and most prosperous eras in Egyptian history. During this golden age, pharaohs no longer built massive pyramids across the plains. Instead, they carved deep into the cliffs, creating elaborate and more concealed tombs. The remote mountain setting was seen as crucial in preventing tomb robbery, although history shows that this strategy was not always successful. The tombs were designed according to the natural terrain, so each one differs in size and structure. Some are simple, consisting of only a small chamber, while others are highly complex, with hundreds of corridors and rooms. Inside these deep chambers lies an entire world prepared for the deceased. From golden sandals and intricately carved coffins to statues of gods, chariots, jewelry, and everyday items, everything was carefully arranged. The ancient Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but merely a transition to the afterlife. For that reason, they provided pharaohs with everything necessary to continue their existence in eternity. By examining the interior arrangements and the murals that cover the stone walls, we can clearly imagine their funeral rituals, religious beliefs, and profound faith in rebirth. Famous names such as Tutankhamun, Seti I, and Ramesses II rest here. Among them, the largest tomb belongs to the sons of Ramesses II, who ruled from 1303 to 1213 BC. Although only partially excavated, archaeologists believe that at least 4 of his 52 sons were buried there. As of 2006, more than 200 corridors and chambers had been uncovered, making it the most complex structure in the entire valley. Yet, like many other tombs, most of its burial treasures were looted long ago. In contrast, the tomb of Tutankhamun is the most famous, despite its relatively modest size. Many theories suggest that because the young king died at only 18 or 19 years old, construction had to be completed quickly. Ironically, that very modesty may have helped the tomb escape widespread attention and avoid looting for centuries. When it was finally excavated, thousands of artifacts, nearly intact, astonished the world. From that moment, mysterious stories began to spread. Several members of the excavation team reportedly fell ill, and some even died, fueling rumors of the curse of the pharaoh. Was it merely coincidence, or a symbolic way of protecting the young king's eternal rest? The answer remains debated to this day, but such mysteries only add to the enduring fascination of the Valley of the Kings. In that seemingly desolate desert, each tomb serves as a doorway into a glorious past. And the more we learn, the clearer it becomes that the ancient Egyptians did more than build resting places for their kings. They left behind a living treasury of history, where power, faith, and immortality blend into a story that continues to captivate humanity's imagination. The stone walls of Sakai Huaman and the unanswered mysteries. Imagine standing before an ancient structure rising majestically against the sky, once considered the stone heart of a great civilization. What would you think? Massive stone blocks, some weighing up to hundreds of tons, are fitted together with such precision that not even a sheet of paper can slip between them. And most remarkably, the entire structure was built without a single drop of mortar. Yes, the monument in question is Sakai Huaman, an awe-inspiring and mysterious construction of the Inca civilization, located on the outskirts of the ancient city of Cusco, once the sacred capital of this powerful empire. Sakai Huaman, also pronounced in the native Quechua language as Sakai Huaman, is far more than the ruins of a fortress. It is a symphony in stone, created with engineering skill far ahead of its time. Its zigzagging walls rise in three terraced tiers like the scales of a dragon. Each enormous stone was meticulously shaped and fitted together so perfectly that the entire complex appears to have been carved from a single massive block. One of the walls stretches about 1,300 feet long and stands approximately 20 feet high, while the largest individual stone reaches nearly 28 feet in height. It is almost unbelievable to think that this was accomplished centuries ago, by hand, without machinery, and without cement. Scholars estimate that the original Sakai Huaman complex was 4 times larger than what remains today and could accommodate more than 10,000 people. You may also be surprised to learn that the Quilca culture, predecessors of the Inca, began constructing the earliest walls here in the 12th century, hundreds of years before the Inca Empire reached its golden age. This means Sakai Huaman is not merely an Inca symbol. It is a living testament to generations of ancient inhabitants of the Cusco region. Yet Sakai Huaman was likely more than just a fortress. Recent archaeological surveys suggest it may have functioned as a sacred temple, a site dedicated to the worship of the sun, the supreme deity in Inca culture. 3 towers once stood on circular foundations above the massive stone walls. These towers are believed to have been used for sacred ceremonies, where priests lifted their prayers toward the radiant light of the Andean sunrise. Then, in the 16th century, tragedy struck. When the Spanish forces entered Cusco, they dismantled much of Sakai Huaman in an effort to erase indigenous cultural symbols. They also reused stones from the sacred site to build houses, churches, and mansions for the colonial elite. What remains today are the stones that even the Spanish could not move. Some of these blocks weigh as much as 200 tons and still stand in place, powerful proof of the endurance and extraordinary craftsmanship of ancient hands. As you look at this monumental structure, have you ever wondered, how did the Inca transport and position such enormous stones? Was there knowledge or technique beyond what we commonly understand today? And if this truly was a sacred temple, how many rituals, how many secrets still lie dormant beneath these ancient layers of stone and earth? The answers are difficult to determine, but one thing is certain: this remarkable structure continues to leave us in awe. The Bog Mummy and a 2,000-year-old mystery that has never been solved. More than 2,000 years have passed, empires have fallen, civilizations have turned to dust, yet in the cold layers of mud in the northern lands, one man still lay there, preserved as if it were only yesterday. He is known as Growl Man, one of the most perfectly preserved bog bodies ever discovered. But what has troubled scientists for decades is not only how he was preserved, but the haunting question: who killed him and why? The story begins in 1952 on the Jutland Peninsula in Denmark. 2 peat cutters were working in a waterlogged bog when their shovels suddenly struck something unusual. At first they thought it was just a rotting log, But as the mud was gradually cleared away, a face emerged. Not a white skull, but intact flesh, eyes closed, lips gently pressed together as if asleep. News spread quickly, and authorities promptly secured the site so archaeologists could begin excavation. When they lifted the body from the bog, everyone was stunned. The skin was still there. Wrinkles around the mouth, a slightly upturned nose, even fingerprints were clearly visible. The internal organs were nearly intact. The man lay in a strangely relaxed position, his limbs slightly bent, almost like he was in a yoga pose. So what had preserved him so completely? A peat bog may sound ordinary, but in reality, it functions as an extraordinary natural preservation chamber. The constantly waterlogged environment, spongy soil, lack of oxygen, and high acidity unintentionally prevent the growth of bacteria that cause decomposition. Growl man's hair and skin turned a dark reddish color due to a chemical process known as the Maillard reaction, a process in which proteins and sugars in the body react with the acidic environment. The combination of water, acid, and low temperatures transformed the bog into a perfect coffin for more than 2,000 years. But what truly sends chills down the spine is not his remarkable preservation. It is his death. Modern forensic examinations determined that Growl man died around the 3rd century BC at approximately 30 years of age. He did not die of illness. His throat had been slit deeply from ear to ear, a decisive, brutal cut. His body was completely naked. There were no signs of an accident. This was clearly an intentional killing. Imagine it. A man forced to kneel. Behind him stands someone holding a blade. One cold slice ends his life. His body is then carried and thrown into the bog. It sounds savage, doesn't it? Yet many researchers believe this may not have been a typical execution, but rather a ritual sacrifice, part of the spiritual life of prehistoric Germanic tribes. Growl man did not have the calloused hands of a farmer. His palms were soft. His fingertips bore no signs of heavy labor, nor was there evidence that he had suffered frequent hunger in childhood. All of this suggests he may not have been an ordinary laborer, but someone who held a special status within his community, or perhaps a carefully selected sacrificial offering. What is more, Growl man is not an isolated case. Across Europe, many other bog bodies have been discovered in similar conditions. Most died violently. This strengthens the theory of religious ritual. However, because historical records of Germanic tribes from the Iron Age are extremely scarce, these conclusions remain hypotheses. To this day, modern science continues to examine his body using CT scanning, DNA analysis, and radiocarbon dating. Each new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, yet the full picture of his death remains incomplete. Perhaps what unsettles people most is the contrast. A refined, almost peaceful face. A body preserved so perfectly it resembles a wax figure. Yet behind it lies a violent and mysterious death. He is so well preserved that one almost forgets they are looking at someone who died more than 2 millennia ago. And so we ask ourselves, did the bog preserve only a body? Or is it still guarding a secret? A secret about belief, fear, and ancient rituals once thought necessary to appease the gods. More than 2,000 years ago, that man closed his eyes in the freezing bog. More than 2,000 years later, he still lies there, as if issuing a challenge to modern science. Uncover the truth if you can. And perhaps it is that silence that has made Growl man one of the most haunting archaeological mysteries in the world. Don't you think so? The Siberian Ice Maiden, Mummy and the 1,000-year-old mystery revealed. Amid the snow-covered mountains of Siberia, where icy winds can cut through skin and the ground has been locked in permafrost for thousands of years, a young woman lay undisturbed for more than 2,500 years. She is known by the poetic name the Siberian Ice Maiden, also referred to as the Ukok Princess or the Altai Ochibala Princess. Yet behind that beautiful title lies a story both glorious and tragic, one that shook the archaeological world in the late 20th century. The story began in 1993 on the Ukok Plateau in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, Russia. A team of archaeologists led by Dr. Natalia Polosmak began excavating an ancient burial mound. At first, it appeared to be a typical kurgan, a traditional burial structure of the nomadic tribes of the region. But as they dug deeper, they uncovered a wooden chamber completely frozen within the permafrost. According to those present, the feeling was both thrilling and nerve-wracking, as if they were opening a door into a world that had been asleep since ancient times. Inside the chamber was a solid pine coffin. Beside it were two small wooden tables neatly arranged, still holding horse meat and mutton, offerings for the deceased. Scientists even found residue of a dairy product, possibly yogurt, stored in a wooden container with a handle, along with a stirring utensil. 6 sacrificed horses lay frozen outside the chamber, all positioned with their heads facing east, a detail of profound spiritual significance, similar to burial traditions found in many ancient cultures, from Egypt to the Pazyryk people. Imagine it. More than 2 millennia ago, in the desolate frozen mountains, a solemn funeral ritual was carried out. A young woman was sent off with prized horses, animals symbolizing strength and status. What does that tell us? Clearly, she was no ordinary person. Research indicates that the Ice Maiden lived in the 5th century BC and belonged to the Pazyryk culture, a nomadic group renowned for their intricate tattoo art and elaborate burial rites. When Dr. Polosmak's team opened the coffin, they were nearly speechless. The interior was still frozen solid, so much so that hot water had to be carefully used to melt the ice gradually in order to avoid damaging the artifacts. As the ice thawed, a nearly intact body emerged. Experts later determined she was a young woman between approximately 20 and 30 years old. Her hair was neatly braided. Her skin, pale from the cold, still retained its structure. But what astonished researchers most were the tattoos that covered her body. On her left arm, right thumb, and left shoulder were astonishingly intricate tattoos. The creatures depicted were posed in strange positions. Some even rotated 180 degrees, suggesting deliberate and mysterious artistic intent. Her skin bore images of unusual flowers, leopards, lions, sheep, and even mythical creatures such as winged leopards and deer with eagle-like beaks and large sweeping antlers. These designs were not merely decorative. They reflected the beliefs, mythology, and worldview of the Pazyryk people. Each tattoo may have served as a protective charm, a symbol of power, or a spiritual mark. Initially, many believed she was a princess, but further discoveries shifted that theory. In the tomb, archaeologists found a tall woolen headdress adorned with gold leaf and embroidered with 15 different species of birds, features strongly associated with shamans in Pazyryk culture. So was she royalty or a powerful female shaman? To this day, there is no definitive answer. After being transported to a research facility in Novosibirsk, the mummy underwent DNA testing, MRI scans, and facial reconstruction. The results were heartbreaking. She had developed breast cancer in her early 20s, and the tumor had metastasized to her lymph nodes. There were also signs of osteomyelitis, a serious bone infection. The pain she must have endured was likely excruciating. According to Dr. Polosmak's analysis, when her illness reached its final stages, she was brought to the Ukok Plateau to await death. In Pazyryk belief, the souls of the deceased journey to a mountain pasture to reunite with their ancestors. Thus, burial in the high mountains was not merely ritual. It was a sacred passage guiding the soul to its spiritual destination. But the story does not end with archaeology. After the mummy was revealed to the public, the Altai people strongly protested. They believed the Ice Maiden to be their ancestor and demanded that she be reburied. When a 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck the Altai region in 2003, causing casualties and significant damage, some even claimed it was the anger of a disturbed spirit. Science speaks of DNA, MRI scans, and cancer. Belief speaks of souls and the sacredness of snow-covered mountains. Between these two perspectives, the Siberian Ice Maiden remains, like a bridge between past and present. So who was she truly? A princess, a shaman, or simply a young woman with an extraordinary fate? Can you answer that? As for me, I believe what makes this story so haunting is not only the mysterious tattoos or her death from illness, but the feeling that, even after sleeping beneath the ice for more than 2,500 years, she is still telling us a story that has never truly ended. Isn't that both terrifying and deeply unsettling? The tomb, the forgotten husband of the famous female pharaoh, Hatshepsut. Nearly a century and a half after the wandering remains of a pharaoh were first discovered, the archaeological world has once again been shaken by the official identification of his true resting place. That figure is none other than Thutmos II, the fourth king of Egypt's 18th dynasty. a man who once stood at the height of ancient Egyptian power, yet whose legacy was overshadowed by the immense fame of his wife. Information released by the Egyptian Museum states that a British-Egyptian research team has identified the tomb of Thutmos II. This is an especially significant discovery, marking the first time in more than a century that Egypt has located the tomb of a pharaoh since the resting place of Tutankhamun was discovered in 1922. Just think about it. More than 100 years have passed since Howard Carter opened the door to Tutankhamun's tomb, and archaeologists have tirelessly searched for the remaining secrets of Egypt's kings. Yet only now has the mystery of Thutmos II's burial site, he ruled from 1493 to 1479 BC, finally been resolved. Isn't that both surprising and fascinating? The excavation, led by Dr. Piers Litherland of the MacDonald Institute for Archaeological Research at the University of Cambridge, revealed chilling details. From the very entrance, the grandeur was unmistakable. A large staircase descending into a majestic corridor. The team had to crawl through a narrow passage approximately 33 feet long, squeezing through an opening less than 16 inches wide to reach the main chamber. Before them appeared a portion of a 3,500-year-old ceiling, still almost perfectly preserved. A deep blue background was adorned with shimmering golden stars, a decorative style reserved exclusively for pharaohs' tombs. Not only that, the ceiling bore depictions of the Amduat, a sacred funerary text describing the sun god's journey through the underworld, intended solely for kings. This detail helped researchers confirm the royal identity of the tomb's owner. The clearest evidence came from fragments of glass vessels inscribed with the name of Thutmos II and that of Hatshepsut, his powerful wife. Once the ancient inscriptions were deciphered, there was little doubt remaining. This was the original resting place of the overshadowed pharaoh. But why was his mummy discovered as early as 1881, while his tomb has only now come to light? The answer lies in evidence of flooding within the tomb. Experts believe that only about 6 years after his burial, water inundated the chamber, causing severe damage. This may have forced Hatshepsut to relocate her husband's remains to a secret location at Deir el-Bahari, the temple complex on the west bank of the Nile, just above her own famous mortuary temple. This discovery is not merely the unearthing of a tomb, it also untangles a major historical puzzle of the 18th dynasty. For years, Egyptologists believed that Thutmos II's tomb must lie on the opposite side of the mountain near the Valley of the Kings. When the first signs appeared, archaeologists even suspected it might belong to a queen. No one expected they were standing before the resting place of a king. Thutmos II has long been considered a relatively obscure figure in historical records. His reign is often described as unremarkable, largely because real power seemed to rest in the hands of Hatshepsut, his half-sister and chief wife. After his death, she initially served as regent for his son, Thutmos III, but gradually declared herself pharaoh and ruled for 21 years, leading Egypt into a period of remarkable prosperity. Hatshepsut strengthened trade networks, commissioned monumental construction projects, and launched successful military campaigns. History therefore remembers her as Pharaoh Hatshepsut, while Thutmos II has often been seen as little more than a shadow behind her. Now, with the discovery of his tomb, that narrative may finally begin to shift. Every wall, every fragment, every inscription within that 3,500-year-old chamber may contain clues about a king whose story has never been fully told. Archaeologists believe the area accessed so far represents only a small portion of the entire tomb complex. It is very possible that treasures and valuable artifacts still lie deep within, waiting to be uncovered. Perhaps soon, beneath those ancient stones, we will find the answer to a question long buried in the desert sands. Was Thutmos II truly an insignificant king, or simply a ruler overshadowed by the extraordinary brilliance of the woman who stood beside him? Until then, be sure to follow the channel so you don't miss any secrets related to this pharaoh. 3,200-year-old fortress filled with treasures of Pharaoh, Ramses II. Along Egypt's windswept coastal region, where today there are only stretching fields and cracked earth, archaeologists have uncovered a secret that lay dormant for more than 3 millennia. That secret is a massive military fortress built during the reign of Ramesses II, now officially brought to light. Ramesses II, also known as Ramesses the Great, was the third pharaoh of Egypt's 19th dynasty during the New Kingdom. He is remembered not only for his monumental building projects and legendary military campaigns, but also for leading Egypt into a period of extraordinary prosperity. Yet behind that glory stood a formidable defensive network designed to protect the kingdom's borders from ever-present threats. According to a report from Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, an expedition led by Dr. Ahmed Said El-Karadli uncovered a series of mud brick structures that once served as military barracks. The site is located at Tel al-Abkain in Baharia province along Egypt's northern coast, a strategic position on the kingdom's western military route. More than 3,200 years ago, this was not barren land, but a bustling frontier outpost where soldiers stood guard day and night. The fortress protected Egypt's northwestern border from the threat of invasion by Libyan tribes and the mysterious forces known as the Sea Peoples, ancient warriors who once spread fear throughout the Mediterranean. What has most impressed experts is the architectural layout of the military complex. The garrison units were arranged in two symmetrical groups separated by a narrow corridor. This design reflects not only disciplined organization, but also how the ancient Egyptians maximized the terrain to create defensive advantages. Every surviving mud brick and wall fragment stands as evidence of sophisticated construction techniques from over 3,000 years ago. Within the ruins buried by time, archaeologists discovered traces of storage areas for weapons, food supplies, and daily necessities. Broken pottery shards and animal bones indicate that this was once a lively living space. The presence of cylindrical clay ovens suggests that these rooms were not merely storage facilities, but also places where food was prepared and cooked for the soldiers. Among the rubble, one particularly remarkable artifact captured everyone's attention: a finely crafted bronze sword engraved with the emblem of Ramesses II. That sword may once have been held by a warrior guarding the frontier, reflecting the desert sun and ready to confront any enemy who dared approach. The discoveries were not limited to weapons. The site also revealed personal items such as ivory coal applicators, agate beads, and scarab-shaped jewelry inscribed with the names of deities. These small details bring the scene vividly to life. The soldiers stationed at this outpost were not only warriors, they were individuals with beliefs, habits, and personal lives of their own. Another intriguing find was the burial of a cow within the fortress grounds. In ancient Egyptian culture, cattle symbolized strength, prosperity, and fertility, and were closely associated with the gods. The presence of such a ritual within a military complex shows that spiritual belief went hand in hand with armed power. According to Dr. Muhammad Ismail Khalid, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, the discovery confirms the military importance of Tel al-Abkain within the dynasty's defensive strategy. This was not merely a small guard post, but a major fortress housing a substantial number of troops and playing a crucial role in protecting the kingdom's territory. Ramesses II died in 1213 BC. From that time until today, the fortress has stood for more than 3,200 years. Though now reduced to ruins, its complex structure and the artifacts uncovered provide further evidence that his reign was truly one of the most brilliant periods in ancient Egyptian history. Standing before the collapsed mud brick walls, one sees not only traces of warfare, but also feels the pulse of an era. The soldiers who once patrolled here likely never imagined that thousands of years later, future generations would unearth each brick to learn their story. Perhaps what makes this discovery most captivating is the sense that every layer of earth removed reveals not just a fortress, but a gateway into the glorious age of Ramesses the Great, where power, faith, and war blended together into an epic written across the desert sands. 6. Face-down skeletons in a cave on Gran Canaria. On the salt-swept cliffs of Gran Canaria, amid a landscape that seems to hold nothing but sun, stone, and crashing waves, there exists a story that sends chills down the spine. Hidden within a cave tucked into the island's rugged terrain, archaeologists discovered 6 skeletons lying face down against the ground. Not in a typical resting position, not in any familiar burial posture. Instead, it was a deeply unsettling scene, as if time itself had deliberately concealed something for centuries. Just imagine it. 6 individuals, all lying prone. Some had their hands bound. Others appeared to have been secured with straps. Large stones had been piled on top of them. Is this simply burial, or does it carry a far darker meaning? It is difficult to say, but according to initial assessments by archaeologist Veronica Alberto, who led the excavation, The men clearly experienced what she described as a violent death. She believes this was a funeral practice marked by intense symbolic violence. Some bodies were forced face down onto the rocky surface, after which large stones were thrown over them. Such treatment raises countless questions. What had they done? Or were they victims of some form of collective punishment? Further analysis revealed a striking detail. All 6 skeletons belonged to adult males. Their arm bones were strongly developed, suggesting they had engaged in heavy physical activity. They may have been warriors. They may have been laborers of great strength. Or perhaps they held special roles within their community. Yet ironically, no grave goods or accompanying materials were found. No pottery, no tools, no jewelry. Everything was eerily silent. This absence of clues has made it extremely difficult to determine when they died. Archaeologists are considering the possibility that the remains belong to the island's indigenous population. However, due to the geological characteristics of the site and the region's complex historical context, they are not ruling out the theory that the skeletons date to the period following the Spanish conquests in the late 15th century. During that era, the Canary Islands witnessed intense upheaval, violent conflict, and profound shifts in power. So what truly happened inside that cave? A mass execution? A ritual sacrifice? Or punishment for those deemed traitors? Until radiocarbon dating results are available, all interpretations remain hypothetical. Researchers must wait for scientific data to determine the precise age of the remains. Yet sometimes it is precisely the silence between the facts that gives archaeology its power. Those 6 men once lived, breathed, and walked this land. Did they have families, dreams? And in their final moments, did they know they would be placed face down beneath cold, heavy stones? No one knows for certain. All we know is that beneath the sun and wind of Gran Canaria today, that cave still lies there, quietly guarding its secret. And we, those drawn to uncovering the past, find ourselves once again pulled into the search for truth, where every bone and every layer of soil has the potential to change how we see history. And who knows, when the scientific findings are finally revealed, the story behind those 6 face-down skeletons may prove even more shocking than anything we can imagine. It just might. The 130-year-old missing shipwreck discovered beneath Lake Superior. For more than a century, in the icy waters of Lake Superior, a ship lay motionless in the darkness, as if time itself had forgotten it ever existed. Then, after 130 years of disappearance, the vessel was finally found, unveiling a story both tragic and awe-inspiring, one that leaves anyone who hears it in silence. Yes, that ship was the Atlanta. On May 4, 1891, the Atlanta was being towed by the steamship Wilhelm, carrying tons of coal across the vast lake. No one imagined that what seemed like an ordinary voyage would turn into a catastrophe. A sudden storm swept in. The wind howled and waves rose like towering walls of water. The tow line snapped. The Atlanta's sails were torn apart. In a matter of moments, the ship was swallowed by the lake. There were 7 crew members aboard. When disaster struck, they managed to lower a lifeboat with a fragile hope of survival. But fate was not yet finished. As the lifeboat neared shore, it suddenly capsized. Only 2 men survived and made it safely to land. 5 lives were lost forever in those freezing waters. What makes the story even more haunting is that although the survivors provided detailed accounts of the wreck's location and circumstances, search teams were unable to find the Atlanta for decades. Perhaps it was because Lake Superior is simply too vast, too deep, and too cold. It is the largest, deepest, and coldest of North America's Great Lakes, with water temperatures hovering around 39 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Those harsh conditions both concealed and paradoxically preserved what lay beneath. Only recently did the mystery begin to unravel, thanks to the efforts of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society. Search teams used side-scan sonar technology to map more than 2,485 miles of lakebed. Then, at a depth of 650 feet, about 35 miles off Deer Park, Michigan, the 170 feet long wreck appeared on the screen like a ghost from the past. The images astonished everyone. After 130 years, many parts of the Atlanta remain remarkably well preserved. The wheel is still in place, the mast remains standing. Even the ship's toilet has not been completely destroyed. Most striking of all, the nameplate reading Atlanta is still clearly visible, resting quietly in the deep water. The name has endured for more than a century, though its origin remains unclear. Bruce Lynn, executive director of the society, has said that finding a shipwreck after so many decades is extraordinarily rare. He described the vessel as lying there like a shining sun. Under the lights of the exploration equipment, the hull and its ornate details still radiate an antique beauty, as if it had sunk only yesterday. It is precisely Lake Superior's harsh environment that preserved the Atlanta. The frigid temperature and extreme depth limit the activity of microorganisms that typically cause decay. As a result, the ship has retained its astonishing shape for more than a century. However, at nearly 650 feet below the surface, accessing the wreck by divers is extremely difficult and dangerous. Most of what we see today comes from remotely operated vehicles, and the Atlanta is only one of thousands of similar stories hidden beneath those vast waters. It is estimated that around 6,000 ships have sunk in the Great Lakes region, with approximately 550 wrecks resting at the bottom of Lake Superior alone. Most of them remain undiscovered. The Atlanta slept beneath the cold lake for 130 years. Now rediscovered, it is more than just a shipwreck, it is a witness to an era. And who knows? In those dark, silent depths, other secrets may still be waiting for the light of human discovery to reach them. What do you think? Or do you see it differently? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. 2,000-year-old oak, human figure unearthed from the soil of England. While construction was underway on the HS2 high-speed railway project in a marshy area of the English countryside, experts unexpectedly uncovered a 2,000-year-old oak wooden figure, one of the extremely rare surviving artifacts from the early Roman period in Britain. What first appeared to be a lifeless piece of timber buried beneath a Roman-era drainage ditch in the village of Twyford, Buckinghamshire, concealed within it a human form, carved with details so vivid they send chills down the spine. At first, the excavation team assumed it was merely a fragment of wood degraded by time, but gradually, signs of craftsmanship began to emerge. The figure stands approximately 26 inches tall and 7 inches wide, carved entirely from a single piece of oak. Despite having endured 2 millennia, most of the body remains intact. The feet and part of the forearms have decayed, yet one can still clearly make out features such as hair or possibly a hat, strong calves, a slightly tilted head, and most notably, an ancient tunic cinched at the waist and extending to just above the knees, evoking the image of a figure from Roman society. From there, a cascade of questions followed. Whom does this figure represent? A deity? An ordinary person? Or perhaps a ritual offering? There is no definitive answer. However, the carving details and clothing style have led experts to believe it dates to the 1st century AD, consistent with Roman pottery fragments discovered at the same site. It appears the figure may once have been cherished, perhaps carried or displayed in a domestic setting, before eventually, for reasons unknown, being placed into the ditch, where clay soil and low oxygen conditions unintentionally preserved it for 2,000 years. What particularly excites archaeologists is the rarity of such a find. According to Helen Wass, head of heritage for HS2, this is an exceptionally rare discovery. To date, only 2 other examples of Roman period wooden human figures have been recorded in Britain. The survival of an organic object like wood in Britain's climate and soil conditions for 2,000 years is almost unimaginable. Yet the damp, oxygen-poor clay environment beneath the ancient ditch acted like a time capsule, protecting the figure from normal decay. Jim Williams, senior science advisor at Historic England, also described the find as highly significant, not only because of its rarity, but because of its potential to reveal insights into the lives, culture, and beliefs of Roman-era inhabitants of Britain. Stone, pottery, or metal objects from the Roman period are relatively common in excavations. But intact organic items like wood are archaeological treasures. And what makes this even more remarkable is that this is not merely a carved block of wood. It has a human form, expression, and stylistic character, as if telling a story forgotten for thousands of years. Currently, a separated fragment of the wooden figure discovered in the ditch has been sent to a laboratory for radiocarbon analysis. Through this technique, scientists will determine the artifact's precise age. Stable isotope analysis may also reveal the origin of the oak, whether it came from a local ancient woodland or was transported from elsewhere. behind this discovery lies a wealth of unanswered questions. Why was the figure placed at the bottom of the ditch? Was it part of a religious ritual? A symbolic act marking an important community event? Or did the people of the past intentionally leave this object behind as a message to the future, and now we are the ones finally reading it? USO diving discs, phantom shadows beneath the surface. When we talk about unidentified flying objects, UFOs, we usually picture saucer-shaped craft hovering in the sky, flashing briefly across radar screens or appearing in grainy footage against the night sky. But few people realize that alongside the mysterious world above us, the oceans may harbor a similar, perhaps even more elusive phenomenon. USOs, short for unidentified submerged objects. If UFOs are ghostly shapes drifting through the sky, then USOs are dark silhouettes gliding silently across the ocean floor, capable of extraordinary speed, vanishing without a trace, and displaying behaviors that seem to defy our current understanding of physics. Historical accounts of USOs stretch far back in time, possibly as early as 329 BC, when Alexander the Great led his campaign across the Jatsats River in India. There, he and his soldiers reportedly witnessed a silver shield-shaped object hovering over the water, moving unlike any known creature or vessel. Fascinated and unsettled, Alexander is said to have commissioned the construction of a diving bell, considered one of the earliest forms of a submarine, in an effort to explore the river's depths. Some accounts even suggest that this mission was not merely to investigate a strange object, but to search for the legendary kingdom of Atlantis, believed to lie submerged beneath the sea and, according to certain theories, possibly serving as a base for extraterrestrial observers quietly monitoring human civilization. Notably, reports of USOs are not limited to ancient legend. On the night of October 11, 1492, during his voyage across the Atlantic in search of a westward route to Asia, Christopher Columbus and his crew reportedly observed a mysterious light rising from the ocean depths in the region now associated with the Bermuda Triangle, an area long linked to unexplained disappearances and supernatural lore. According to entries in the ship's log, the light suddenly shot up from the water, flickered several times as if signaling, and then vanished into the darkness before the stunned sailors' eyes. Not long afterward, they sighted a new landmass, the Americas. This coincidence has fueled conspiracy theories suggesting that USOs may not merely be mysterious objects, but could somehow be connected to guiding, observing, or even influencing the course of human history. The 20th century brought a wave of equally astonishing reports. On February 8, 1960, the Argentine Navy detected two massive underwater objects. Assuming they were American submarines, naval forces initiated pursuit operations. What happened next defied conventional military explanations. The two objects suddenly split into 6 smaller units, then burst upward out of the sea and disappeared in an instant. Their speed, apparent shape-shifting ability, and complete evasion of radar tracking exceeded the known technological capabilities of any nation at the time. In another well-known incident in March 1963, 2 U.S. submarine fleets conducting exercises near Puerto Rico reportedly detected an unidentified object moving underwater at extraordinary speed. It was said to be capable of diving to depths of 20,000 feet, far deeper than the operational limits of most modern submarines even today. For 4 days and nights, the fleet tracked the object, but it ultimately vanished from sonar and radar screens as if it had never existed. Despite thorough analysis of the recorded data, no satisfactory explanation was ever produced. What makes USOs particularly mysterious is the environment in which they operate. The deep ocean, a realm even less explored than outer space. While UFOs can be observed through telescopes, ground radar, or even smartphone cameras, USOs move through perpetual darkness, where radio waves barely penetrate and sunlight never reaches. If a civilization possessed technology far beyond our own, the deep ocean would be the perfect hiding place. So what do you think about these submerged unknown objects? Are they secret submarines belonging to a global superpower? Ancient technology buried beneath the sea? Or perhaps, more boldly, messengers from beyond our world, silently monitoring humanity's evolution and progress? In my view, whatever the truth may be, USOs remain one of the greatest mysteries of modern science, a phenomenon beyond the reach of microscopes, radar arrays, or satellites, felt only through the enduring tremor of human curiosity. 2,000-year-old bronze sword beneath the soil of Henan, China. On March 14th, in the city of Zhukou, Henan Province, China, archaeologists excavated a bronze sword from an ancient burial complex dating back approximately 2,000 years. It was a discovery that sent shockwaves through the research community. And for those of us who love history, it's the kind of find that sparks breathless curiosity. The burial site contains 21 tombs, constructed over a long span of time, from the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BC, to the Eastern Han Dynasty, AD 250 to 220. In other words, this site witnessed countless upheavals during one of the most transformative eras in Chinese history. Unfortunately, most of the tombs were looted long ago. Only 5 remain relatively intact, and it was within one of these rare, undisturbed graves that the precious bronze sword was discovered. The sword was not the only artifact unearthed. Archaeologists also found numerous burial goods, bowls, plates, ceramic jars, along with 2 bronze spears and a bronze spearhead. Though silent, these objects tell a vivid story of refined craftsmanship and the spiritual life of the people who once lived there. Have you ever wondered why so many weapons were buried alongside the deceased? Was the tomb's occupant a warrior, or perhaps a person of notable status within society at the time? Preliminary assessments suggest that the sword most likely belonged to the tomb's owner and was interred with them upon death. However, their identity and social standing remain unknown. And it is precisely this mystery that makes the discovery all the more compelling. Every excavation is not merely the recovery of an object, it is the unveiling of a fragment of history, a missing piece in the cultural and funerary traditions of people from the Warring States and Eastern Han periods. What makes this discovery even more intriguing is how it recalls a far older archaeological legacy. The oldest bronze sword ever found in China dates back about 5,000 years and is associated with the Majiayao culture in Gansu province. Compared to that 5,000-year-old predecessor, this 2,000-year-old sword may seem younger, but it still reflects the astonishing depth of ancient metallurgical skill. Each discovery like this enriches the field of archaeology and deepens our understanding of people in the past, how they lived, what they believed, and how they prepared for the journey to the afterlife. Standing before a sword that lay buried for 2,000 years, don't you feel as though you're touching history itself? As if the distance between present and past suddenly narrows to nothing more than a thin layer of earth? Perhaps the greatest allure of archaeology lies not in the material value of artifacts, but in the unanswered questions they leave behind. Who was the owner of this sword? What battles did they endure? Why did their tomb escape the hands of looters for thousands of years? These mysteries are still waiting to be unraveled, and for us, those who are passionate about discovery, there is yet another reason to keep watching as each layer of soil is turned, listening to the past whisper through objects that may seem lifeless, yet are filled with stories. Fascinating, isn't it? That is exactly what makes archaeology so captivating. Sometimes it's not massive pyramids or glittering treasures of gold and silver that leave us in awe. Instead, it's the small yet haunting secrets, powerful enough to make us sit in silence and reflect on life, on family, and on the things time has deliberately buried. What about you? How do you feel about these stories, these mummies, and the archaeological discoveries we've just explored? Leave your thoughts in the comments below so we can continue this journey into the mysterious past together. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any other remarkable discoveries. For now, goodbye, and I'll see you next time.